China. I'm joined today by Ryan Liu for this live podcast. Now, before we get too deep into the woods on this podcast, I want to make sure that we're actually being heard out there on the internet by the people, because sometimes we have some audio issues. Okay, sweet.
This is chat for yes.
The sound is coming through on my end, and it's looking good. So, we're good to go. As far as I can tell, we have a couple of people in the chat, Hurricane and Opti. Please let us know if you can hear us, if there are any audio issues, because that would absolutely suck if we speak for an hour or two and nobody can hear a word we are saying. So please let us know in the chat if the audio is coming through. Marshall Geeks is in the chat. Cool.
Hey, what's up, Tom?
You know him?
Oh yeah, Martial Geeks is run by Tom, who's I believe in Eastern Europe, in Croatia.
Yeah.
Audio
Love
is
that dude.
perfect. Yeah.
Okay, sweet. Audio is perfect.
Can you hear me,
Kevin
Opti?
Lobos from Argentina is in the chat. Sweet. We got a good group going. You guys play chess. Okay. So
right, cool.
let's do a real hard intro this time. It's Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Welcome to this edition of the Ramsey Dewey podcast. I'm joined today with special guest Ryan Liu. So Ryan, a few weeks ago, I was doing a live stream, and this is how I met you. In the live stream, in the chat, you had some questions on an episode of Q&A with the Coach Live about some relationship issues, and I hope it worked out for you. If not, I'm sorry for the terrible advice. Oh, okay, cool. That's good to know. What ended up happening? If you wouldn't mind.
She told me more about why she would want to do the dance as opposed to just like showing off for other guys. She wanted to explore explore her femininity in a way that say like writing or any form of art couldn't. And while I agreed with her, I still set it as a boundary for me to be in a relationship with the person to not have someone do that. And she agreed and said that although I still want to do it, I won't because I respect your boundaries.
Interesting. Okay.
Also, she's tried jiu-jitsu with me as well beforehand, but
okay, so you ended up doing jiu-jitsu together.
Yes, we did jiu-jitsu at this open mat, Jay Page's. Her knees really screwed up, but she enjoyed doing it.
Okay. Well, that's cool, man. How can I put this? I've seen some attempts at bringing your girlfriend to jiu-jitsu class go horribly wrong for a lot of dudes. So I'm glad to hear that it went well. And by horribly wrong, I just mean like some
They
girls just hate it, just absolutely hate it. It's not that there's something inherently wrong with jiu-jitsu. It's just that some people hate jiu-jitsu. It's just what it comes down to.
I think when it's more of an open mat setting, like it was a primarily jiu-jitsu gym, but it's also an MMA open mat. So, and she's done some Sanda before. That's how we met. So, like putting those two together, like helped her like understand jiu-jitsu a little bit better.
Yeah. So Ryan, you are a Sanda athlete, correct?
Yes.
I
won.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. I'm a national champion in the U.S. for Sanda. I will represent the U.S. national team for the Pan American Championships in 2024 for September, and I'm a gold medalist in both the national and Pan American Championships.
Outstanding. So, needless to say, you're kind of a big deal.
I don't know, man. Sanda's not big in the U.S. We don't get any government funding. Man, you in China, like all those guys get so much money, and we're out here being poor and broke. Like all I have to show for it is this like little medal here that costs like $5 on Amazon or something.
Yeah. It is an interesting dichotomy, Sanda and China, because it's technically the Chinese national combat sport. However, it's still kind of a niche sport in China. Even though it does receive government funding, there are government-funded Sanda programs at the major sports universities, and there is money thrown at this sport. There are about 10,000 of those guys in China. That's not to say there are only 10,000 people who've ever practiced Sanda, but like 10,000 athletes in the Chinese um, sport university system competing in Sanda, which probably sounds like a lot. It's probably a lot more
Compared to the
than most other
US.
countries, right?
Mhm.
Compared to the entire Chinese population, that's a tiny drop in the bucket. Like
Yeah.
if 10,000 dudes do a sport in a country with 1.5 billion people, it's not a lot.
Mhm.
But so it is a very strange dichotomy here.
Mhm.
Tell me a little bit about the state of Sanda in the United States right now, because when I lived there, I'd never really heard
Practically
of
nothing,
it
right?
until I
Yeah.
came to China.
Muay Thai is so much more popular than Sanda. Like sometimes, like first of all, I go to ASU in the Arizona State University campus in Tempe, as well as downtown, and almost no one knows what it is. Like even MMA is not popular. Like I'm friends with the guy who runs the MMA club at ASU, and we started a
Hmm.
Sanda club at ASU. And when people come in, they're like, "Oh, is this like Muay Thai or is this like kickboxing?" Right? And in Arizona, there's practically zero gyms here. Like honestly, half the time we're stranded looking for a place to train. Sometimes we train at the ASU campus. So, like sometimes, like I've spent the bulk of my training, I believe, for training for nationals in either a park or garage training. And
Hmm.
honestly, like the guys from like Ohio who and the guy that I fought, Derrickson Mung, is part of a famous family. And in Ohio, in Texas, and California, there's like a few big gyms, but in like everywhere
Uh-oh.
else
Looks like
in the
we
country there's
froze for a moment here.
hello? Hi. I'm not sure about that. I can hear you clearly. Hello?
Is um,
Hello?
Ryan, you're back. Okay, so there was a lull in the action for a minute, some internet connectivity problems. So you're back though, as far as I can tell.
What was the last thing I said?
So you were discussing your Sanda training. You were training in a garage, and you were
Yeah.
about to fight some dude, and then you kind of cut out.
The person I fought at nationals, Derrickson, is part of a famous Sanda family who brought Sanda primarily to the U.S. via the USA WKF, which is the USA Wushu Kung Fu Federation.
Hmm.
And he has a gym in Ohio, Mung's Martial Arts, which is run by his family, hence the Mung, right?
Right.
And they're very big. They have a lot of they have a lot. They actually teach Shaolin Wing Chun as well as Sanda, and they have three brothers who actively compete in the sport. Derrickson being the youngest, which is also my age, but Derrickson, as well as the rest of his family, have a big gym in Ohio. But even then, like they have to come down to Texas, which is like the U.S. National Training Center. Sensei Seth went there to Texas to train with head coach Ian Lee, who is a mastermind of the sport. Like if you know that Piotr Jan Osotogari sweep that he does, I've seen it and learned it from one of your
Okay.
videos. But I've actually also learned it from Ian Lee the same exact way, the way he does the running Ian sweep, the way Piotr Jan does, the way Zabit does.
Yeah.
We call it
Oh,
the Ian Lee
it's.
sweep. Yeah.
I think it's really important to learn fundamentals like that. Observe them from different coaches and different athletes,
Mm,
because specifically because they'll execute them slightly different ways. And so you can observe certain patterns of success and failure in different situations depending on how you set it up. So you mentioned like I'm not super familiar with the way Peter Yan does that. You said like a running
mm.
movement.
He essentially slips a punch, gets offline, like if he's left foot forward, he brings his right
Oh,
foot
we're
out.
freezing
He
again.
is-
What's happening?
Hello?
Um, Now I'm worried if this is a
On
connectivity
your
issue on
end.
my part.
Do you hear me?
You're Yeah, I hear you, but you're not
Alright,
moving. So
I'm not here. I can move to a different room if that maybe helps.
maybe let's give that a try.
Is it? Do you think it might be on your end?
It might be. Here, let me just try resetting my VPN here for just a moment, which might cause a lull again, but it might resolve the issue.
All right,
So,
moving upstairs.
okay. Well, I can see and hear you again,
Okay, hello.
and it looks like we're back on the live stream. So, apologies to the viewers. We seem to be experiencing a few technical issues. Hopefully, that's the last of the hiccups. We shall see. So,
Actually, it says in the comments that they seem to be seeing the stream just fine. Maybe it's just freezing on your
oh,
end.
maybe,
Yeah.
maybe it's just what I'm seeing. Okay. So, meanwhile, everybody at home is watching us like, "What's happening? Where are you?" And they're like, "Why are you guys stopping? What's happening?"
Mm.
Okay, on with the podcast. So, once again, we're discussing Sanda training in the US, and, where were we?
We were talking about the Ian sweep or the other guy from standing position.
Yes, and what specifically makes it different the way Peter Yan does it and the way your coach taught it to you?
The way he taught it differently was that instead of setting up with like say strikes, he does it off of a slip, meaning that he steps into it and takes his shoulder offline, similar to like the
Hmm.
way Tyson would a hustle step almost into one of his hooks, right?
Okay.
And
Interesting.
even sweep just does it off of any clinch or whatever. He's done it to Aljamain Sterling. He's done it to Song Yadong, who's also a Sanda fighter. He's done
Yeah,
it
yeah.
to some people. Yeah, and Peter Yan himself is also half Chinese, and he's also Russian, and those guys always train the Sanda. I don't know why. Islam Makhachev on the podcast with Demetrius Johnson was talking about, hey, he's like, brother, who have this black belt? We need to check this, and he was like, Sanda, sambo, wrestling. These are sports I do. You know.
Yeah. It's I'm gonna have to check this out now, the way Peter Yan sets that up. That sounds really cool.
Yeah, it's
Um,
amazing.
especially in the context of striking, which of course Sanda is. Uh,
Mhm.
uh, I've had this conversation a lot with people outside of China asking me about martial arts in China, specifically what makes Sanda
Mhm.
different, what makes Sanda unique, how is it different than kickboxing or Muay Thai? So, what a perfect guest to answer those questions for all the normies out there who aren't super familiar with the sport of Sanda. Tell us a little bit about what makes Sanda its own unique sport. What sets it apart from the other combat sports?
What sets it apart from other combat sports is the unique ability to shoot for takedowns as well as trip for takedowns
Hmm?
during a striking situation. And it predominantly becomes a striking position because, say, in Muay Thai, you clinch up, you're in a predominantly grappling situation whereby you can strike, whereby you can do your trips. But Sanda, much less limited. Why? Because you can reap the legs, which is heel against their leg, which you can't do in Muay Thai.
Hmm.
And number two, you can change levels into a takedown. The point of the striking in Sanda is different from other point fighting sports like Taekwondo, for example, or maybe even amateur boxing, because in order for a point to count, it has to both touch, cause effect and damage, meaning it moves you, and number three, it has to make a sound, right? So
Hmm.
the chest gear that they wear, like in Sensei Set's video, they gave Sensei Set the things not so that it could like protect him or anything, but so that they could hear the damage when you hit it, right? Versus
Yeah.
Taekwondo, which is just touch, 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 or boxing, which is just touch, touch, touch.
Well,
Amateur.
in old Taekwondo, like in the 90s and early 2000s, it
Mhm.
actually was gauged based on how much sound and movement it was. In modern Taekwondo, they've got an electronic Kogu for scoring.
Yeah,
So now it really you just have to touch. Back when I was competing in Taekwondo, you had to make an audible sound. It had to be a big boom, otherwise no score. So
I
that is
competed
that
in
is an
yeah.
interesting point about making a sound.
Mhm. The WT Taekwondo that I competed in when I did it in like maybe half a decade ago, that like
Uh-oh.
they would just tap
We're
and then that's
flanking
it.
out on the audio. I am anyway. Hmm. So I'm
It might
missing
be
Ryan's story about Taekwondo here. Oh,
it
you're
might
back.
be oh hello. It might be a thing on your end because they seem to be having okay listening.
Maybe. Let me
Yeah.
try just resetting my internet connection real quick here, and
Okay, go ahead.
hopefully that will resolve the issue and not make it worse.
Meanwhile, Tom, good luck at your Sanda event this spring.
Okay. Tom in the comments is competing? Cool.
in spring.
Sweet.
Shout out Tom, by the way.
Okay, so Ryan, where did you grow up? Are you were you born and raised in the U.S.?
I was born in San Jose, California, and I was raised predominantly in Arizona, Tempe.
Okay. So how did
Yeah.
you become involved in Sanda in the United States?
In the United States, it's very hard. Most recently, went to ASU, and I told my friend Brendan to sign up. Who he was my second student ever. I told my student Brendan to sign up for one of Coach Yang Pan's Sanda like classes, which is an actual class in ASU that you can take like for credit,
Hmm.
like and you get A+ and everything, right?
Awesome.
If you up for all of them. And he goes to the class and I go to sign up too, but there's not enough people in there and I have too many credits, so I couldn't take it the first semester. Second semester I joined the class and then he's like, oh, he says in his Chinese accent, he's this tall Beijing guy with bald hair with glasses, and then he goes up to me and he's like, oh, you want to compete in national? And I'm like, okay. And then I just start competing again, and like I stopped for a long time because of injuries. I just re-injured my thumb and my knee, unfortunately. But I'm
Hmm.
competing once again in March 8th for a local tournament, and then once more again in May for the next nationals to qualify for the world tournament this year.
Awesome. Outstanding. Where's the world tournament going to be held? Do you know?
Brazil, which is
Brazil.
on
Cool.
honestly has more popular sanda than China, and honestly, Iran is doing better than both of them, but which is odd.
Yeah, I'd believe that. I would believe that. I know it sounds odd because it's like, shouldn't China have like the biggest Sanda team ever? And kinda, but at the same time, we'll see exceptions
Mm.
to this sort of thing in all kinds of different sports.
Muay Thai
Like,
too.
yes, yes, absolutely. Man, there are so many dudes from Europe, all kinds of Europeans excelling in Muay Thai right now.
Mhm.
And a lot of these dudes are just levels above their Thai contemporaries right now. It's
Mhm. And
and
all of the people in one championship are in the lower weight classes. So even I mean, there's still Jonathan Haggerty and the like, but even in the higher weight classes, like most of the time, the champions are not like from Thailand themselves.
mm,
And even though China usually wins the world championships, the junior world championships, which was anyone 18 below, a couple of my friends who are younger went there, and they predominantly saw Iran win, and look at the scorecards, Iran won the most gold medals.
hmm. Yeah, I've met a lot of Iranian fighters who come to China to compete in kickboxing especially. Like, probably K1 rules kickboxing displaced Sanda as, like, being the most popular striking sport a long time ago, actually,
Mhm.
probably, like, 15 years ago, and, man, I used to work as a ringside commentator for Kunlun Fight, which was at the time the biggest kickboxing show in China. There were so many Iranian fighters, like, a
Yeah.
lot, and these guys clearly had a very specialized background in Chinese style kickboxing. Like, I something I used to see a lot when foreigners would come to fight in China, they would be surprised by the stylistic differences. For
Mm.
example, leading with a side kick to the head,
Yeah, I
which
love that.
yeah, it's one of those things you'll see in Sanda, you don't really see in Muay Thai.
Mhm.
And so when you get side kicked in the head, just a power jabbing like side kick right to your jaw, it's shocking to a lot of people, and they're like, "What?" And then moments later, they're shooting in on a double leg,
Mhm.
and you're like, Nobody fights like that." In China, they totally do, it's normal.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've seen a lot of foreigners get surprised by just different strategies like that, but, again, a lot of these Iranian Persian dudes, not so much, they seem to be well prepared and familiar with these types of strategies. which is interesting.
Yeah. A lot of those differences between styles has to do with maybe culture, but it also has a lot to do with the point system. Like maybe culture in the way that Muay Thai, they don't like touching with the bottom of their feet to the person's face, especially in
Hmm.
sparring. We don't have any of those issues. But another reason is the differences in, like, for example, their like point systems, right? So in
Right.
Sanda, a punch to the face is worth 1 point, but a body kick or to the face or body is worth 2 points, and a takedown can either be worth one or two depending on whether you stand up or not, right? But if you're behind on, say, takedowns, right, you can hit to the head or body and then you can get those 2 points back, right? You side kick them in the head, then you 2 points back. And one of the reasons, sorry, side kicks are so popular is not just because, oh, traditional martial arts, we practice side kicks, but because you're on a lei tai, right? And you're trying to
Hmm.
get them to move out of the lei tai, you're trying to push them off. And what's the best way to do that? Side kick them off, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. What was I going to say? I
One of
blanking on
the
my thought. Go
reasons
ahead.
another one of the reasons why the sidekicks are popular is because if this is the end of the lei tai, you're on this end of the lei tai and your opponent's here. What's a way to get the other guy off of you as they're trying to push you off the lei tai? Sidekick, circle out. And that's another
Right.
reason why there's a stylistic difference between the kicking styles, and, like, of course, also the rules allowing double legs will let you sidekick them in the face and then double leg them.
Yeah, that's a strategy I love. It's one I picked up from Chinese Sanda fighters and implemented into my MMA coaching a lot. A sidekick leading into a takedown, which once you start doing it, it makes perfect sense.
Mm,
And yet, it's something that like no Western
does
MMA coaches fit those two dots together. It's kind of bizarre, really. But
yeah.
it can be a
Oddly,
sidekick to the head, it can be a sidekick to the leg, sidekick to the body, but that's a excellent entry to close the distance and move into double leg territory.
Oddly, a psychic to the leg was something that the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu guys used to do before they completely neglected striking. Yeah.
Yeah, weirdly, Hoist Gracie was doing that in UFC 1. His sidekicks weren't pretty, but that's basically what he was doing, like chopping the leg with his heel to try to close the distance and then grab the dude's legs. And
Mm.
then somehow we kind of forgot about that.
Yeah, somehow we forgot about that.
Hmm,
I think it's to do in
fascinating.
large part.
About how a scoring system changes the way a sport is performed. And I think nowhere is this more obvious than Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu
Yeah.
tournaments, specifically IBJJF tournaments. And anyone who watches a BJJ tournament for the first time and they're expecting to see a bunch of martial arts action, and instead they see somebody pull guard, is almost invariably disappointed and then will say, "Why are they just sitting down and flopping on their butts? What? I don't understand this." I remember I had a student who was a judo black belt, former judo competitor, and I was explaining IBJJF rules to him. And I said, "Okay, you get 2 points for a takedown, you got 2 points for a sweep." He said, "Wait, let me stop you right there. If you score the same points for a takedown and a sweep,
Why
why
am I
would
still?
anybody risk fighting for a takedown and losing those 2 points when they could just pull guard and fight for a sweep?" And I was like, "Have you ever seen an IBJJF match?" "No."
What happens?
"Okay, that's exactly what happens 80% of the time." Just from a logic perspective, with that particular scoring system, it makes sense 80% of the time for 80% of competitors to pull guard to avoid losing that potential 2-point lead.
I
Because even
started
though
off
80
with jiu-jitsu as well. I'm sorry, I started off with jiu-jitsu as well, and when made the switch to wrestling, it was like I gave up my back so often. My first wrestling tournament, I jumped a guillotine because I didn't understand the rules, and I pinned myself. And then my second match ever, I tried to rear naked choke the guy after taking him down, and then he just did a defensive pin on me. And then the very next day, I go into a jiu-jitsu tournament for like Nogi States, and I was a blue belt at the time, right? And I go up against this first guy, and all I do is take him down. And then the second guy, I take him down, but then he just locks up a Kimura and then sweeps me and then
Hmm.
submits me. And I'm like, what was the point in taking him down, man?
Yeah, the rules really do change the way the sport is played. I've I've had a number of conversations with people who want jujitsu to be more exciting. They wanna see a more sophisticated wrestling aspect in a jujitsu match, and and so I've toyed a lot with the idea of how could you tweak the scoring system to create a jujitsu-based sport where you would see an interesting and sophisticated wrestling game preceding the ground game? And I don't know, to be honest.
The
I really don't know.
my Wing Chun coach, who's also a catch wrestler, and my catch wrestling coach, he's just this big, burly, 270-pound guy, right? And he is like the biggest nerd I've ever met in terms of martial arts, which I love, by the way. That's why he's my coach.
Yeah,
And he's come up with all these kinds of rule sets. Shout out Black Sun Boxing, by the way, if you want to check out his like YouTube or his
Blacks and boxing? Okay.
Black Sun Boxing. He has like all these different rules and stuff. I think you would like some of his content too, because he like even talks about like lifting, nutrition, like kinesiology type stuff,
Yeah,
and even Batman sometimes, which is like my favorite type of content. But
Batman.
he talks about how if he could implement both pins on the back as well as pins stomach down, then you can like if they say gave up their back to like give up for rear naked chokes or whatever, you could also pin them, and that would force a scramble because hey, if I get pinned on my stomach, then I lose, right? And
Hmm,
also employing like the pin rule will automatically with catch wrestling stop
yeah.
them from guard pulling or whatever for the most part, unless there's like a huge skill differential. And then also like having pins make it so that hey, if I stay in this position, I'm done, right? And I think that's a good way to stop the jiu-jitsu boringness. But even then, like in MMA, like as a wrestler myself too, when I see wrestling and MMA and they're just up against the cage and doing nothing, that's the most boring part, not even just the jiu-jitsu. So I'm not even quite sure then that would make it less boring to the average viewer.
Yeah, and if we're talking about boring as well, like, I love the sport of catch wrestling, and I have seen that imperative to start wrestling, to fight for a position rather than playing guard. At the same time, catch wrestling tournaments can themselves be extremely, um, boring or not so audience friendly to watch,
Yeah.
depend very boring match. I
Oof.
didn't like it. It wasn't fun, and it went on, and I was like, "Oh," but I understand why it happened that way because of the specific rules and the way the athletes were competing in order to abide by those rules and work those rules to their advantage. But,
Oh, the stream froze for a bit again. It
oh,
seems to mostly freeze when you guys talk at the same time, by the way.
oh, interesting.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So let's stop talking over each other.
Okay, sounds
Um, I'm not sure if it froze or if I just stopped to think for a minute because I do that sometimes. I'll stop
good.
and I'll ponder, what is my next line of thought going to be? And a lot of the viewers, when I do that, they're like,
Oh,
"Why
it's
do you
frozen.
take all of these deliberate pauses? I thought the thing was frozen for a minute." It's like, "Nope, I was just thinking."
I mean, I'd rather do that than fill my words with or But in terms of the catch wrestling thing, my friend also, and I'm not gonna say his name either, because even though it was an entertaining match, it was very one sided. Because the other problem with catch wrestling is my friend was he was a state qualifier in wrestling. He's no slouch, a white belt in jiu-jitsu. But the other guy was a purple belt and an all American wrestler. And even
Mm,
though, first of all, there was no weight classes in this catch wrestling tournament, which for some reason catch wrestling tends to do, and even though he was much bigger than the guy, he just ran through like it was nothing. Like a purple belt and All American in wrestling as compared to a white belt and state qualifier in wrestling in high school. There's a
mhm,
world of difference there. And
for sure.
if you're a low level catch wrestler and you're just looking to start, how are you gonna start in a tournament? Because you're gonna get mauled, especially if you're small and inexperienced, like well me.
Yeah, and unfortunately with catch wrestling, um, which again is a sport I love and it's a rule set I really enjoy. and it is a rule set I take out, and I use this as a drill for my athletes at my gym quite frequently, just the basic catch wrestling rule. Uh, Pin or submission, best 2 or 3 falls wins, sudden death by takedown if it goes into overtime. Those are fun rules. Um, but I don't know why I keep going on this tirade about, catch wrestling and then forget where I'm going with it. Anyway, it'll come back to me eventually. Let's let's talk about Sanda again. Um, when I was starting out in my very first martial art, Taekwondo, I had this vision of wanting everybody else to love Taekwondo as much as I did. I wanted to evangelize the sport of Taekwondo more and make more people be on board with it. I wanted it to be like the biggest thing ever back in the day. And it is a widely spread martial art. It's actually the most widely spread martial art worldwide
Mhm.
as far as just sheer numbers of people who practice Taekwondo in its various forms. But I have to ask you, have you ever felt the impetus to evangelize Sanda in America,
I
being
mean,
a country where it's
I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to do that. Like, I'm trying to make it more popular. I'm trying to make it like more accessible to people. But at the same time, like Sandan, especially in Arizona, where no elbows or knees are allowed to the face or whatever, as opposed to the old IKF rules where elbows and knees are allowed. Any amateur sport, any amateur combat sport, I should say, in Arizona disallows elbows to the head or knees to the head of any opponent. And they
mm,
changed that rule in 2021 to only be a downed opponent for MMA, which doesn't matter for Sanda. But at the same time, like it's been watered down so much to a degree where like I have to explore other combat martial arts options. Uh, like uh, like I go to my MMA gym, Garage Gang. Shout out by the way. My coach Steve, who coaches out of there and is my predominant striking coach, actually went to you in China, and you taught him the something like a side kick to a spinning back kick on the back, which I know you do. And he
okay.
taught me that to work on my side kick and spinning back kick. I go to them so that I can practice my knees and elbows, for example.
Wait,
Hey,
you know Steve?
yeah, Steve is my coach. He went to nationals with
Okay,
me. If you Google,
okay.
if you Google me, and go onto the YouTube videos under Matthew Lee's YouTube channel, which like records all the Sanda like videos, you'll see him yelling in the background like the entire time. It's like ring generalship because my ring generalship's horrible. It's like stay in the middle, which because I never stay in the middle, and keep your hands up because I fight my hands down here.
Outstanding. Oh, man, that's awesome. This is
Yeah,
so interesting because we, like, know people who know us, and, wow, it's
Steve
all
Chow.
connected.
Yeah, yeah.
Fascinating. Huh. That's that is so interesting, like, I don't often think about the effect that, say, a video I put out on YouTube or a private lesson that I might give to a guy who's visiting in Shanghai might have, um, in the long term, like the butterfly effect these sort of things have. But, yeah, I remember that specific combination, I remember working that with Steve, and that is very interesting that, he passed that on to you, so that's cool. That's really
Uh,
cool.
Someone in the live chat here, Silas Diaz, he's also in Garage Gang, and man, he's an
Yeah.
amazing kickboxer, bro. Like, and like he would just touch me up with stuff. He also does that like outside trip to I think that like the Ian sweep or the Pyotr Jan sweep or the Zibi Magomacharipov sweep, like from
Mm.
Sanda, but he does it, and it's just a beautiful takedown that you. As far as I'm concerned, he's maybe tried Sanda once or twice, and like just seeing what works and having even a garage full of people that are just testing out what works, like you'll discover these things.
Oh, man. Yeah, speaking of Zabit, the first time I saw him fight live here in Shanghai,
Really,
when they
that's
had the yes, when they had the UFC, the first UFC event in Shanghai, Zabit was fighting, and, if you'd never seen this dude fight before and you just saw his physique, which I did, my wife looked at him and kinda rolled her eyes like, "Who the heck is this string bean dude?" And his opponent was some dude from Brazil who was just absolutely jacked, I don't remember
Ooh.
the guy's name, but total physical specimen, and we're looking at these guys like, one of these is not like the other, and if it's a bodybuilding contest, there's a clear winner, but it's
A
the sport of
fighting
mixed
contest.
martial arts, and holy crap, Zabit put on an absolute clinic in the dynamic range of martial arts that
Mm.
night. It was amazing. Absolutely dominant performance all around.
Man, Zabit, like I wish he could. Man, he got COVID too, which is so sad to see. Like all these Sanda guys got COVID and like set us back like 5 years. But
Hmm.
if he didn't have COVID, man, I think that he would be like a nightmare matchup for Ilia Topuria with those head kicks, with those trips, with the wrestling pedigree he has, with the wrestling off his back, with his sambo background. Like I think that he might, like, even if he walked off the couch
Yeah,
today,
man.
he might have a shot at KOing Ilia Topuria.
COVID was weird, man. Did you ever get it?
Yes, I got it like 3 or 4 times, which is horrible.
3 or 4 times. Oh,
I know,
man.
different strains, all different strains.
All different strains. Yeah, and even the same strain affects different people differently. Like,
Yeah.
my wife my wife and myself and my kids, we all got it at the
Mhm,
same time. My kids were fine, like, 2 days later. They had, like, mild fevers, and then they're bouncing off the walls. My wife and I, on the other hand, we were, like, dying for 2
yeah,
months, just like, we can't get out of bed." We're It was rough, man. It was rough. Yeah,
mm.
man, it took me a very long time just to start to feel normal again after that.
Yeah, some people get long haul COVID where it just, like, carries on with you for a long time. My friend from the
Mm,
garage got it, Amin, and he got it was horrible long haul COVID versus me, the first time I got it, like, I went to a jiu-jitsu tournament for the first time. I started my jiu-jitsu back in 2020, and my first tournament, my mom forced me to wear this, like, big K95 mask. Didn't do anything. I still got COVID, and I just felt perfectly normal. I was just quarantined in my house for, like, maybe a couple weeks, and I was like done for. And then I believe the third time I got it from like Seattle, and this was like when the Delta variation or whatever was going on. It had me bedridden. Like I was in the hospital. Like I couldn't even go to my senior year of high school because I was stuck in the hospital. It was horrible.
oh, man. And then you have guys like my friend Jordan Chow, who's been on my channel a lot. He's famous for being the knifey, stabby guy in all the demos. He traveled a lot
Hmm.
during that time to different countries, and in each country he went to, he ended up being quarantined. Not catching the disease, but being quarantined, like, in a hotel or something for, like, a month, and
Hmm.
then he would move on to a next country and then get locked up and quarantined there for, like, a month, and so I think poor dude ended up quarantined for, like, the better part of a year,
Oddly,
so
I do talk to Jordan about that kind of stuff and like random jiu-jitsu techniques we talk about, but it's odd how tight knit the martial arts community is that you just like find all
wait,
these
you
people.
you you've talked to Jordan Chow?
Yeah, like over like Instagram DMs or nothing crazy, but like it's like
Okay.
some
Everybody
touchy
knows
comments on
everybody.
everybody. Everyone knows everybody. Like Jerry Liu from Fight Commentary Breakdowns, I also talk
Yeah,
to
yeah.
off. Shout out to him by the way, because he's stuck in DC. He lives in LA where the fires are going on, so he can't return.
Ah. Yeah, man, my wife's family is from there, from Los Angeles. So,
Mm.
a
Ooh.
few days back when the fire started, oh, man, she, like, woke up in the morning like, "Ah!" Just, like, screaming, and my kids are like, "What's happening?" And she's like, "I don't know, my family might be burning to death, we don't know." Anyway,
Yeah,
she was pretty,
distraught.
pretty spooked about that, yeah.
Yeah.
Fortunately, everybody seems to be okay for the time being.
I was born in California, and luckily my family's like more on the north side, so they probably aren't affected. So I'm pretty happy about that. At the same time, though, I just went to this open mat at Kisenshi Martial Arts, and they're bringing like just a bunch of stuff to go help because they're from Arizona. They're right next to California. We're just bringing a bunch of like water and like
Mm,
supplies that everyone needs.
awesome, man, awesome. That that is, that's cool. Well, one thing I've noticed watching this event, transpire on the internet is the humanitarian relief efforts, that people are organizing. This is cool, not that tragedy happens, but that tragedy brings out the best in people.
Mm.
So it does restore my faith in humanity sometimes, which once in a while tends to get shaken by certain events in this world. But yeah.
I think
So if you're in
I think it proved the reverse for me during COVID, oddly enough, that people are
okay, yeah.
horrible as soon as stuff happens. But with the fires, I think people are responding quite well because it doesn't restrict them as much as, say, like, COVID lockdowns, right?
Yeah. The the COVID lockdowns, that was a different kind of situation. What was it like where you live
Well,
as far as COVID lockdowns go?
I was a freshman in high school during the COVID lockdowns, and essentially,
Okay,
like, which sounds fine, but like for the most part, it set a lot of kids behind in terms of education, in terms of
right.
just basic social skills. Like nowadays, kids will come up to you and say the most egregious stuff that they just see on TikTok or whatever, and
Hmm,
it was horrible growing up too, because like I missed an entire like year of just like my first year of high school, like just sitting
the whole
on my
year.
couch. Yeah, a whole year just sitting on my
Wow.
couch, just like doing all my assignments online and everything. It was horrible.
Yeah, man. Yeah, wow, that's one of the most formative years as far as American education goes, and not just because of the education, but the social aspect as you brought that up. That's man, I remember I was homeschooled during 8th grade. Like, my
Mm.
mom pulled me out of school because I was getting beaten up all the time in
Ooh,
7th grade. Um, and she was legitimately concerned for my life 'cause there were a lot of mean dudes, man. But,
I know, right?
at the same time, I appreciated not getting beaten up every day,
Mm.
but it still kinda sucked just being removed from the social aspect.
Mm.
And so, going back to school in 9th grade, my freshman year of high school, that was important. Like, that was a really important, phase in my life. Like, I'm not sure yeah, man, my life would have been vastly different without that year. That's interesting to think about.
Bringing it back to martial arts, though,
Yeah.
loads and loads and loads of people got into martial arts during COVID. And I started before that, but like I started getting back into it during COVID. I thought I was done with my martial arts career forever because like so many injuries, like this, that, and the other. I was like, do I really love this sport anymore? Like I'm hurting. I hurt other people. Like, is this really a good thing? But during
Mm.
COVID, I was like, what can I do besides shadow box and go play video games? And when I play video games, I'm playing like fucking Sifu. Sorry, YouTube overlords. Effing Sifu on a PS4, playing Pakme or whatever.
Yeah, I think as long as we don't swear within the first 5 minutes of the video, then the algorithm robot overlords won't, come down too harshly on us, so
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good.
but yeah, that's interesting. So I get a lot of questions, speaking of gaming, a lot of questions from gamers who are also martial artists,
Mhm.
and, I don't know how much time you spend gaming. I played a lot of video games when I was younger, um,
The Fallout,
and
sure.
y yes, Fallout New Vegas, one of the finest video games ever developed by humankind,
Mm, of
and, yeah, this one and Morrowind, the 2 greatest games ever made.
course,
So, where was I going with that?
video
But
games
yeah,
and
yes, video games. I get this question a lot from competitive gamers, which is, is there crossover between competitive gaming and competitive fighting? And my first instinct is like, what? No, of course not. Those are 2 radically different, completely different things.
but
And yet, yeah, you had a thought about that. Go ahead.
oh, one of my students in the ASU Sanda team, he was a competitive gamer, like top like 1% in the world in like Overwatch and some other couple games. and something about fighting scratches that competitive urge that he has for video games. And if it feels in a more fulfilling way than like say you won screen online does, and like uh, oddly, I played competitive Pokemon because I love
Hmm.
Pokemon, and it kind of does scratch that competitive urge in the same way, and it's more fulfilling than having you win screen. It gives you health. It gives you a place to bond with others, like in person, and you develop those real skills that carry over with you into real life, as opposed to knowing what type of Pokemon beats what type of Pokemon. You know?
So basically, competitive fighting skills might cross over more into competitive gaming than vice versa,
Yeah, maybe it carries over more than vice versa.
except possibly the damage to your fingers. If you get
Ooh, yeah.
jujitsu knuckles, oh man, your
Oh yeah,
competitive gaming days might be over.
yeah, my calluses on my knuckles are horrible, and my thumb just got injured on Saturday. Oh, it's
Yeah,
horrible.
how did that happen?
So at Pan Americans, when I was fighting the Brazilian on, I believe the 56 kilo Brazilian in this exhibition match, he throws hard, like it's an exhibition, but he starts throwing as hard as he can, and then I'm like, okay, and I throw this big overhand right, and I hit my thumb on him as he's coming in, and it
Ah,
we're wearing like something like 8-ounce gloves or whatever. I think
yeah.
I might not even have hit his like head or whatever, but some hard thing I hit with my thumb, and it's been hurt ever since. And then on Saturday, my this guy at the end of practice is like, "Want to do some light sparring?" And then
One of
he
those
throws
guys.
one of those guys, and he throws this full force spinning back kick in the middle of it. And I'm like, "Well, no more thumb," because I catch oddly, I never move my head for punches, but for some reason I slip a spinning back kick. Not a punch, but a spinning back kick. And I go Sanda catch on it, and it hurts my thumb. Yeah, that is what it
Ah,
is.
like you tried
Yeah.
to do one of those or something?
Actually, this one that you taught in one of your YouTube
Oh,
shorts.
okay, okay.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right. Yeah. Ouch. Yes, this has happened to me. This happened to me. Jamming the
Yeah,
thumbs, catching kicks. It's a risk. It's a
yeah,
calculated risk.
happens.
And that's a common question I get when teaching, leg grabs, catching kicks and things like that, like, "Don't isn't there a risk of getting hurt?" Like, yes, it's a fight. There are lots of risks of getting hurt. What we're doing technique isn't to eliminate the risk of getting hurt, it is to maximize your potential to win the fight while taking ideally as little damage as possible.
Whenever someone says something like, "Doesn't that kick catch have a risk?" You know what also hurts your body? Taking the kick to your body,
Not
doing nothing
catching it?
about it. Yeah, not catching it. That one hurts a little bit more.
What's that?
Yeah, like if someone kicks me in the body, I would rather
Oh,
like
no.
just like lay down and
Frozen again.
die. Oh my bad. Can you
I'm
still hear me?
left guessing.
Have you chatted with the Sanda catch guy that teaches at UCLA? That the Sonic Catch guy sounds very interesting from Matt, but am I unfrozen for you guys?
Ah, you're unfrozen now. Okay, we got a question from Matt in the chat who says,
Mhm.
"Have we chatted with the Sanda catch guy who teaches at UCLA?" I have not. I don't know anybody who is teaching at UCLA right now,
My Sifu,
unfortunately.
Sifu Solomon from Blacks and Boxing, he's a catch wrestler as well, and he helped me with a lot of the Sanda. And he's a Wing Chun guy, which is odd the amount of U.S. guys who like do Wing Chun on the team. Like Vincent Meng, for example, from the Meng's martial arts family, they do Wing Chun to prepare for Sanda. And Sanda, as combined with like a grappling sport, like say sambo, is also oddly common. Like you have your Zabit, you have your Islam Makhachev, you have those guys from Russia, but there's also a guy in New York who has, I believe, like a silver medal in Sanda and like a gold medal in Sambo. And they like just combining those things together, like it oddly works very well because if you combine like say kickboxing with like wrestling, right? It doesn't work quite as well because they're completely different stances. Like you can't shoot a takedown off of your kickboxing stance quite as well as you can off of your say Sanda stance, which is I think
Right,
another reason why the people don't like do a side kick into a takedown, for example.
right. Yeah, there are definitely stances that facilitate takedowns. For example, capoeira stances,
Yeah.
which shocks a lot of people because capoeira essentially moves through the three basic wrestling stances. That's the jinga,
Mhm.
and so you're almost always in a position to shoot for a takedown, to do a level change specifically.
I watched
But
your video on that actually, and I did
yeah,
those inside crescent kick, capoeira kicks into a takedown, I think in Pan Americans, I don't remember where.
yeah,
You can probably find one of the videos or whatever, but I love the Jenga too. It just fits so beautifully. The problem is I can't put my hand on the ground for Sanda, so
yes, yeah. That's again those pesky rules. Which is why I think, capoeira is a lot more fitting. You can stitch that into an MMA game plan much more successfully than a Sanda game plan specifically because of that.
even Muay Thai, I mean Sanchai, I think you made a video about this, but Sanchai breaks the rules of Muay Thai and they just let him get away with it because it's Sanchai, you know. Like cartwheel kicks are against the rules, but it's
Yeah.
Sanchai, you know.
Yeah. Cartwheel kicks are cool though, man.
Cartwheel
I
kicks are
do
cool.
like them.
Mm.
I
I
do like them.
I almost tried one, but then I was like, "Wait, I'm giving up 2 points for literally no reason." It's like I've touched the ground with my hand. I'm just giving up 2 points, and for a maybe head kick, I'm like,
Yeah.
why? Yeah. I think with Sanda especially, there's a good balance between punching and kicking. Like you've spoken with some people about Muay Thai, for example, and how they don't emphasize the punching as much, and how they're leaned back in this like back foot heavy stance, and it's very hard to punch, right? And
Right.
even though in Sanda punches to the head and body are worth only 1 point, and kicks are worth two to the head and body, leg kicks are also worth one, right? So first of all, we have leg kicks and head punches and body punches being equal, right? Second of all, when you throw a kick, you have a much higher risk of getting taken down than say a punch, right?
Mhm.
So the boxing then becomes like a very heavier game plan. Ian Lee, the head coach of the Team USA Sanda team, he is first of all a boxer. Like
Mhm.
most of the training when I went to Texas with my coach Sifo Yangpan, he he brought us there. He drove us all the way there, and I was expecting like all Sanda rounds or like maybe some like wrestling or some taijiquan because I see all the Chinese YouTube videos that are like, oh, if you try this taijiquan form, then you can do this golf swing, which I also learned from you. Um,
Yeah.
and
It's
I'm
a
like,
great move, man.
it is a great move. I expected that to be completely like everything that we did over there. But the first thing that we do, he's like, "Oh, do boxing round," and I'm like, "Boxing?" It's like, and then the more I did it, I was like, the more it made sense. Like, well, he started as a boxer. We're gonna do some boxing rounds. Like most of the time, you're gonna be like throwing hands anyway, because if you throw a kick, you might get caught and taken down, especially against like an Iran guy. And like, what's the advantage that the Americans have over, say, the Chinese, say the Iranians? The Iranians got crazy wrestling. The Chinese have crazy kicks. We got to box with them, right? At Worlds,
Mhm.
Bruce Wong, the highest medalist in Sanda history for America, who got a silver medal in his semifinals match. The last match he won to get his second medal trophy was he did a high knee, which is to defend a side kick, and then he just threw a hard right hand and knocked the dude out. So
Mm.
that was our advantage over the other countries, like our boxing.
Yeah, and this is a very, interesting point you're bringing up. The fact that Sanda, it's a sport, not a style. There are stylistic tendencies, but there
Mhm.
are different styles brought to the table. And, yeah, you'll see nationalistic tendencies like stronger boxing or stronger kicking, but, yeah, it's the same thing. We'll see this with other combat sports too, like boxing, for example.
Mhm.
Like, Cuban boxers have a distinctive style, Ukrainian boxers have a distinctive style, Mexican boxers have a distinctive style, and then American boxers, it's not so much the boxers, but the way boxing is taught by Americans is very different than the way somebody from the Eastern Bloc is gonna teach boxing.
Mm.
So,
I watched your video on that too, by the way.
yeah. Oh, I'm repeating myself. So, I wanna talk about athleticism because I checked out your Instagram and you lift, man.
I
You
lift.
you
I
are
love
lifting
lifting.
some serious numbers, and I'm really happy to see that because there are so many martial artists who still to this day will poo-poo the idea of picking up a weight because they think it's gonna make them slow and muscle bound and stiff and all these other things because they associate lifting weights with getting sore and not being able to move as well. So, talk me through some of your lifting experience and how that has affected your training and how it's helped you as a combat sports athlete,
Well, I first started off with calisthenics because, like, in my mind, like every martial arts gym does calisthenics. I'm like,
right?
that's the way to go, right? And when I first was introduced to lifting, it's when I was doing jiu-jitsu, and so the static strength from the lifting like carried over almost one for one, right? And I get like a bunch of positive feedback. But when I got back into striking, I was like, hey, this static stuff isn't helping me as much. And I was heavily influenced, not to go back to your videos again, by your collaboration with Zach Tellender, who's this
Mhm.
Olympic lifting guy. And I started
Yeah,
thinking, man, I gotta learn
Zach
Olympic
is awesome.
lifting. I gotta love I love Zach Tellender videos, and I like started Olympic lifting like crazy. Problem, I'm not built like a traditional
Oh,
like
man, we're
I'm cutting off.
yeah, we cut off right when you started telling me about Zach Tellender. I was excited to hear that bit.
Oh, I love Zach Tellender, but I like went hard into Olympic lifting. The problem being, even though I saw all these Chinese Olympic athletes, I'm only half Chinese. My dad is Taiwan, and he doesn't like some guy mistook him for like an Indian or Mexican at this
Hmm,
phone place, which is hilarious. But my femurs are extremely long, which I know you can relate to for my body
mhm,
type. So getting under like a full clean is almost impossible for me. So so I spent so much time in that lifting area getting like nothing out of lifting essentially. And I'm like, man, maybe I should just stop this. And I did for a little bit. And like I had crazy static strength numbers. Like I believe I've trap bar deadlifted like 585. I've like conventional deadlifted like 507. Like I had really great like numbers in terms of like static strength. Like even though like I had really bad leverages for everything besides deadlift. Like
hmm.
my arms are super long. Great for deadlift, horrible for bench. I can only bench like 245. Um
Yeah, yeah,
and
sounds familiar.
my femurs being super long, like I can hardly squat, my knees being hurt, hardly squat. So I was like, man, like how much more effort would it put into me getting my deadlift from 585 to 590? This much effort versus how much is it going to help my combat sports? Maybe that much. So, and I looked at
Yeah,
Olympic lifting, I was like, this takes too much skill, this takes too much mobility. What am I going to do? And it was actually my Sanda coach, Yang Pan, who introduced me to the idea of like a landmine clean and jerk, which requires far less skill, has a lot more carryover, and third of all, you go into the position to which where like your left
yeah,
leg is forward, your right arm is forward, and then your right leg is backward. Like that's basically a cross, right? And I made
yeah,
this video like a couple weeks ago of like a couple clips of me fighting and me doing that exercise, and it's literally looks like the exact same movement bar for bar because
mhm,
your legs are splitting, for example, like you would for a takedown, a split step, which you've talked about in depth before, to set up for say a cross, for a takedown, whatever, any level change, or maybe even a switch kick when you switch stances, right? And you're pushing forward with the jerk portion of the lift, which it's essentially a punch. And for the
mhm,
clean portion, like you do that for a takedown, you do that for a lot of things. That was one of the great exercises that helped me. I looked at some of the knees over toes guys stuff that you've recommended before as well. I got really good at a Nordic curl. Man, that improved my hamstring so much, my knee health for one, and my ability to sprint off my punches and takedowns helped a lot as well.
right.
A bunch of like reverse Nordics as well. Basic squats, Zercher stuff that I've seen you do as well. That one's been helping a lot. Jefferson curls, because I realized, man, my back flexibility was so bad I couldn't even touch my toes because of injuries and the leg.
Hmm,
And Jefferson curls helped me in a way that static stretching never could, right? Like I'm able to touch my toes now, and like I'm studying kinesiology to go hopefully into physical therapy. And Jefferson curls did more for me than any amount of physical therapy I've ever done, right? And it's thanks to
yeah.
these exercises and
The
lifting.
the point you brought up about, how lifting, how exercise allowed you to gain access to greater range of motion,
Mhm.
this is really important. Like, I've been retired from professional combat sports for a long time now, since 2011. That was my last pro fight, and I hit the weight room harder than I did back then, not because I'm competing, but because it at age 46, with crippling injuries, allows me to live a healthy, normal life.
Yeah, that's
So,
the most important part. It's the most important part.
like, I know guys with the same type of injuries I have, like, ruptured PCLs, for example,
Mm,
who can't walk anymore,
mm,
who can't do normal things anymore. Guys who've had knee surgeries and so on, and they're done. And I would say most of that has to do with the fact that they stopped moving.
mm,
I also like the point you brought up about the point of diminishing returns of lifting. And
mm,
this is the part I think a lot of combat sports athletes should pay attention to. Because you know, the folks who tell themselves, I'm not gonna lift because it's gonna make me slow, they're obviously wrong. But Um, if you can squat twice your body weight, if you can deadlift 2.5 times your body weight, if you can bench press your body weight, something like that, again, there's only so much more benefit that greater strength is going to offer you, juxtaposed with the amount of effort and time it's going to take you to get that greater strength. So
mhm,
essentially, if you can reach like intermediate lifting numbers, that's great if you're a professional fighter.
mhm, mm,
And, that's achievable. Like, if you're an
really.
able-bodied man, that is an achievable goal to reach, like, intermediate, lifting numbers.
It's funny that you brought up the 2.5 times body weight deadlift, for example,
Mhm.
because like amazing coach like Firas Hobby, when he was on the topic of like deadlifting, he says, "Hey, first of all, you need to deadlift because otherwise, how else are you going to find a kettlebell that weighs 200 pounds, for example?" But even then, he said once a month and nothing more than like 1.5 times your body weight, like not even 2.5 times your body weight, 1.5, which I think is like eh. Like I have really great leverages for deadlifting. I have long arms. I'm short. Like deadlifting to me is like 2 inches off the ground. Like that's great. And of course, I can lift a lot more with deadlifts than say like someone who is your height, for example, right? But I don't think it's that extreme. But like my Sifu Solomon from Black Sun Boxing, he has a bulletin board thing where he posts a bunch of articles, and he has a degree, and he studied in exercise science, and he has like a minimum strength requirement for lifting, and it was pretty similar to what you said, like 1 times body weight bench, twice body weight squat, and 2.5 times body weight deadlift.
Yeah, and we could play around with those numbers a little bit, but yeah, having some basic standard like that for basic compound lifts, I think that's a pretty good metric to go by.
Mhm.
Now, obviously, there is going to be some some variables in that, but again, I had a student once who was just the strongest human being I've ever met. This guy could deadlift like close to 1,000 pounds fairly easy, and and just huge, strong dude. And I remember I asked him like, "What would it take for you to get stronger?" And he said, "Oh man, let me tell you all about it." And he listed like this rigorous program of of lifting and resting and nutrition and pharmaceutical help and so on, and
Yeah,
it was complicated, and it was like, okay, so basically just to lift, like, put 10 more kilos on the bar, it would be a whole science project.
yeah.
Yes.
And you'd have to
Um,
drop everything else, including martial arts. Like,
yeah.
that's too much fatigue on your body. Like, I have a 4 times body weight deadlift. For me to get it to 4.1 times body weight, like, the amount of strain on my just from doing the lift, if I can do it, the amount of strain on my central nervous system, especially I'm completely natural, like, I have no pharmaceutical help. It's all on my body weight to take that 4.1 times my body weight. Like, imagine how hard it is to lift just a human being who weighs 1
Mm.
times my body weight. Multiply that by 4, and then you're trying to add that much. It's so much effort for, like, so little return, unless you're carrying 4 of you, but
Indeed, indeed. So, I think it's so much more important, especially as a coach, to encourage potential fighters, to encourage athletes to pursue the achievable goals because,
Mhm.
man, there are so many people, especially young men right now, who see perfectly achievable goals, physiques, lifting numbers, etc., and they'll throw their hands up in the air and say, "Oh, well, those guys are all on steroids. Everybody stronger than me is on steroids." I hate that, man. I hate that. Obviously,
Yeah.
there's performance enhancing drug abuse out there, and it's rampant in professional sports, combat sports included. But when you see a normal athletic guy with a normal athletic physique lifting totally achievable numbers, and people say, "Ah, he's on the juice," it just makes me want to want to strangle fools and be like, "No, you don't understand. Just
You
do
could do
some
this.
push-ups and pick up some weights, man." Eat
I
some animals and plants instead of sugar for a change.
Yeah, modern day, like my generation, I'm 20 Gen Z people. We call those people black pill, meaning like
Yeah.
oh, that's not achievable. You can't do that. And I remember when I was younger, I would watch all these like BS BuzzFeed videos saying, "Oh, six pack is so unachievable, it's so unrealistic." And then I saw your video of you having it at like 40 plus years old, and I'm like, if this guy can do it, I'm like a teenager, bro. Why can't I do it? I'm like, yeah, you can. Like, it's not that hard to, get to there. Are you frozen?
We were frozen for a minute there, sorry.
Oh. Oh, you're
Yeah,
good, you're good. You
I
got the right point?
we were talking about six packs and you saw a video of mine and then blank. Oh, man,
Oh,
I
I
was
saw a
getting
video
excited
of
about that then.
I saw a video of you having it at, like, 40 plus years old, and I was like, "Man, if he can get it, I'm a teenager, why can't I get it?" Like, people tell themselves that it's unachievable, you can't achieve these goals, it's unrealistic or whatever, when in reality, like, there are people who do it, and you don't have to be a professional athlete in order to, like, achieve the goals that you wanna do.
Yeah,
And
man.
accusing you of steroids, man, I've gotten it, and I'm like 150 pounds soaking wet, man. Like, if I'm on steroids, bro, you gotta up your standards.
But basically, if you are athletic in the modern world, you're on steroids these days. It's nuts. It's nuts.
Yeah.
But man, the first time I had a visible six pack, the first time I got one, I was in my 20s.
Mhm,
And I'd never really even thought it was I thought that's something that happens to other people, not me. I'm not a super athletic guy. I got a job at a factory,
mhm.
and it was a bunch of heavy lifting and pushing heavy things and lifting heavy things and moving heavy boxes around just all day, like picking up weights between 100, between 50 and 100 pounds and moving them around all day. And I worked this job for 13 months and didn't really think too much, didn't think about my physique at all. It's just, this is hard work,
Mhm.
work, sleep, tired. This is exhausting. 13 months later, I remember taking my shirt off and looking in the mirror, and I was like, where did
Wait a
those come
second.
from?
Yeah, where did that come
Like,
from?
I got like a Bruce Lee physique going on here. What's happening? It
Mhm,
blew my mind. And, uh, and I realized, like, oh, two major things happened there. Um, a dietary change because I was eating all my meals at the factory cafeteria, and
mhm.
it was very regimented eating. It's not that the factory cafeteria was like super healthy food or anything, but it was regimented eating. I was eating the same, uh, basically the same number of calories all the time, and moving a lot more and a lot more consistently, and that's it. Just more movement and regimented eating, and then all of a sudden 13
Abs.
months later, boom, abs. It's 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 shocking how simple it is. I'm not gonna throw out the word easy because, a lot of people struggle and they're like, "Well, it doesn't seem easy to me." But changing body shape, body size, body composition is really a very simple thing.
Mm. Calories in, calories out. I thought it was
Yeah.
impossible for me because both my parents are diabetic and they were both obese. And I was like, if that's where I come from, genetics say that I can't have it. And then when I got it
Hmm.
on like my first wrestling weight cut, and I'm not gonna say it's easy either, because like wrestling is, in my opinion, like one of the toughest sports in the world, if not the. And after just like doing no lifting, no nothing, because I literally couldn't. I got out of practice. I was like, oh, I climbed into this bed and I was like, ugh, I can't do it anymore. And I just woke up one day. I looked in the mirror and I was like, wait, I have abs now. That's kind of sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That that's interesting. I saw this documentary decades ago about these folks who lived on a Native American reservation. I don't remember which tribe it was, somewhere in the southwestern US.
Mm,
And like everybody in this tribe had diabetes. Like everybody was
mhm.
suffering from diabetes. And then the younger people decided to just start running. And because that's they always heard these stories about their ancestors, and that's just something that their ancestors always did. So they started running, and suddenly it started changing. Like the diabetes problem in the population started reversing simply because they changed their lifestyle. They
Want to hear something
essentially,
fun?
yeah,
Uh, that might be in Arizona. You said southwestern US. That might be in Arizona. Because
yeah,
I was just at the reservations yesterday actually. Because my friend Roman is Native American. He's the first
right,
Native American on the US Sanda national team. And we went there, and literally everyone was obese. And they have essentially this free gym that we're trying to get to use for a facility for
right,
everyone who's Native. And I think I look Native enough, and they just don't question me because I'm Asian. But I go
yeah,
in there and like everyone is obese, like even his father, for example. But he's cut down from like 250 pounds to he made 176 pounds in weight, which is amazing. And like the first thing you see when you walk in there is like diabetes education and all that. Like and
yeah,
he started running as well. Like they put it one of the most basic things: move more, be educated. Like you have essentially a free gym because the government throws free money at them, which might not be the best solution, but it's there.
yeah, and it's a solution that causes a lifestyle change, and when you have lifestyle changes, you have body composition changes, you have health changes.
Mm,
So when you have a population that is living a essentially like a nomadic culture out on the land, hunting, gathering, this sort of stuff, their health is going to be radically different than if they're living in an industrialized society.
mm.
So it's, I guess the point I'm trying to make is we can look at our ancestors or we can look at our mom and dad and siblings or the people around us in our community and think, well, yeah, well, I'm cut from the same cloth as them, so obviously I'm fated to the same fate as them, and it's it's not necessarily true. Like, man, I grew up in a household of hypochondriacs. I'm just gonna put that out there. Um, so my now that probably sounds a little extreme. I don't wanna tarnish my mom's reputation too badly, but because she did have some legitimate health concerns, quite a few of them actually,
Mhm,
but there certainly was a propensity toward hypochondria.
mhm,
And my younger brother, I think he was really affected by this, and to this day, he's very OCD about hypochondria. Like, if he hears about a disease, like, oh, maybe I have that. Let me Google the symptoms and this sort
mhm.
of thing. And it can be a very debilitating mindset
Yeah.
to basically be raised in this mindset of you're sick, you're feeble, I have this disease, and so do you. It's it's it is crippling psychologically.
Mm,
And man, I remember when I was a kid, I I always had low blood sugar when I was a kid.
mm,
And my brothers all had low blood sugar. We all had low blood sugar. And my older brother, he went off to college and he came back and said, "Ramsey, I figured out the cure to hypoglycemia." And I was like, "What?" Because I just thought it was like a disease that we carried and it was incurable. And he
mhm.
said,
Eat a
keep
candy
leaning
bar.
close, eat breakfast. And I was like, "Well, what?" And anyway, it's I grew up kind of poor, and we didn't always have
Breakfast
a
cereal.
lot to eat. So when I finally got to a point in my life where I could eat whatever I wanted, it was like this radical change in energy. Like I remember being young and poor and not having access to um, ideal nutrition and just feeling weak and just all the time feeling weak and tired and like, man, how is everybody else so much stronger and athletic than me? I must be broken. And the problem was I just wasn't getting enough fuel. So
Yeah.
somebody in the comments says Ramsey is obese. Soak it in. Soak it in. I think I've got a BMI of like 28 or 29 right now, which is
I do too, actually, but I'm much
yeah,
smaller. I'm much shorter, but I look I'm okay. I'm okay. It's odd because like my body fat is like 10 by a unit of 10 under my BMI because I'm overweight for my height because of just muscle. BMI is stupid.
yeah, it is. It is. Some people hear like BMI of 29, that's like borderline obese, dude. What the heck, man? But BMI of 29 with a body fat percentage of 10% is a completely different thing.
Yeah. I think FFMI is a lot better too because like you can see how much fat free mass you have.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the topic of like people being too concerned with your health and stuff, like I feel like it's very easy to fall for that idea of like there is risk in this, therefore we shouldn't do it. But in reality, like there is the same thing with like catching the kick. What if you accidentally hit your hand? Like there's risk to everything, including like going outside. Like if you spend
Yeah.
your time like coddling your kid and saying, "Oh, you can't do this, you can't do this," then obviously they're not gonna do anything, and that's a bigger risk wasting their life than just going out and doing something and maybe catch a disease. Maybe you're tired, maybe you have low blood sugar. uh, I had insomnia like and I still do clinical insomnia for like my since I was like in middle school. And like if I just succumb to like I can't sleep, I have no energy all the time, then I wouldn't have done anything that I've done in my life, and I would be a much sadder person.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
much
for
for
sure, man. For sure.
yeah. So much for intermittent fasting. I don't know about intermittent fasting, man. I tried it when I was young. I It kind of
You know, I
worked. Go
I
ahead.
I did try that specifically because, years and years ago, I did a podcast with my friend Ned, and Ned was a big power lifter, and
Mhm.
we went on this tirade against, what do you call it? The,
Keto.
yes, the ketogenic diet. We were both
Yeah.
just poo-pooing the ketogenic diet like, "Ah, the ketogenic diet is crap, nobody should ever do that." And we got so much pushback. People were like, "Well, have you tried it?" And I was like, "Well, no, but I don't need to because, you know." And then I got just so many comments like, "Dude, you can at least try it before." And I was like, "Okay, okay. You know what? Fine. I will try it just so I can speak from experience instead of instead of
From
s-
statistics.
yeah, speaking from statistics and science books and so on." So I tried it. Tried keto for a few months and Um,
Did
I
you hate
didn't
it?
feel great, to be honest. I didn't feel great. I felt very low energy, like very
Mhm.
low energy. I can see why people who are not actively into combat sports and sweat a lot and teach multiple classes a day and spar multiple times a day and lift weights and all this stuff on top of that, like I was doing at this moment in my life. People who live fairly sedentary lifestyles might feel comfortable on a ketogenic diet. If you're leading an athletic lifestyle, on the other hand, I just felt kind of gross, to be honest. I
Mm.
felt like, um,
I
Now
tried
most
it.
people go yeah,
I
most
tried
people
the
go
keto
on a
diet.
keto
It's horrible. Go ahead. Sorry, my bad.
yeah, most people do it to attempt to lose weight, to lose some body fat, and I did a few other things at this point as well because people were asking me, "What do you think of
Intermittent fasting.
long-term fasting, intermittent fasting, etc." So I tried that stuff too. I tried intermittent fasting, like 2 days on, 2 days off, 2 days on, 4 days off, 1 day on, 1 day off, just all kinds of intermittent fasting for about 6 months or so. Um, I tried long-term fasting, like several 10-day fasts and so on, just to see what the what the whole thing is. Now I've fasted my whole life for religious reasons, once a
Mhm.
month, 24 hours, dry fast, no food, no water for 24 hours. But again, that's always been for religious reasons. I never until I started making that series of YouTube videos on the topic had even thought about fasting for physical, secular health reasons or anything like that. The long-term fasting, the thing that worried me about that the most was how it would infect my intestines because I've had 4 major surgeries on my intestines after, after a ruptured appendix.
Ooh.
Um, but I did manage to get through that. The honestly, compared to a dry fast,
Mhm.
if you can drink water,
It's nothing.
long-term fasting is nothing. It's easy.
Mhm.
Like, even a 24-hour dry fast, especially, like, in the summer, I would
Mhm.
say is much harder, in my opinion, than a 10-day fast where you can drink salt water.
Yeah, in Arizona especially, it's so hot during the summer. Like I remember cutting for nationals, and I've never cut or sorry, I've never fasted for like religious reasons. I'm a Buddhist though, but I think that fasting in for religious reasons, for example, is like something that can elevate your mental like understanding of suffering and all of this. But I don't think it really benefits your health in any significant way. I tried keto as well. Horrible. I kind of do it when I weight cut so that I just have less water, but like that is, in my opinion, the most unhealthy part of combat sports, weight cutting. So to me, like fasting and doing keto is like the most stupid. Like you're essentially going through a weight cut for no reason. You're not
Ah,
even making weight. Yeah, it makes no
yeah.
sense.
Oh, man. How's weight cutting in, Sanda competition? Is that something that's done?
Yes,
Do they
I
have weigh-ins or day before?
It's actually really odd. For Pan Americans and nationals, what we do is we weigh in the day before at like early in the morning, whenever, right? So at nationals, for example, like I cut from like I probably walk around in the off season like maybe 160, 155. Guess what weight class I cut to?
So you started at which weight?
I walk around like fat, not fat, but still abs, but like relatively fat, more muscle bound at 155, 160. What weight cut do I make to?
150. Oh, man, I'm guessing you probably jumped a few weight classes down. Hmm, especially if you ask me that question. Okay, wow. And you're already starting out walking around as an MMA lightweight. Oh, boy. Let me guess, it's something ridiculous like 30 pounds.
Yes, it was 132. It was I think 28 pounds. So you're almost exactly on the dot. But
Wow.
yeah, I cut that for nationals. And the worst part was they changed the venue from California to Arizona, and they changed the date as well. So originally it was supposed to be in May. They changed it to July. And the thing is, end of July and beginning of September have like 4 to 6 weeks between. So I had to make the weight cut in July to make the national team, and then I had to fight again in September, which was completely unprofessional in my opinion, because I had to make those huge weight cuts twice. But for nationals this year, for worlds, I'm gonna go up a weight class because for worlds you don't weigh in the day before. You weigh in every single day, 3 times in a row, and I'm like, there's no way I'm cutting 30 pounds 3 days in a row. Like I won't be able to eat,
Wow.
sleep, or do anything.
Yeah. So how did you manage that? What ended up
I
happening?
So for this year with Worlds, I'm gonna go up a weight class. Last year, man, I barely made it. I barely made it at 60 kilos, which is 132 pounds for nationals. What happened was, what helped me was I offered to help to, the lay tie, the platform they stand on in
Mhm.
Sanda. We had to carry that entire thing from a storage unit, put it into the U-Haul. We drove the U-Haul all the way to the tournament. We took all of it out and then set it up. The day before the tournament, I was exhausted, and then I had 3 fights the day after. And, like, I was dying. Like, I could not. I like the I honestly hardly had to sit in the sauna because Arizona heat, 120 plus degrees outside, carrying all this stuff like for hours straight, no break because we had to just carry all of it in. Like I hardly needed to cut. Now, Pan Americans, worst. This was one of the first times I went on a flight to do the weight cut. So I made the amateur mistake. I didn't eat it all the day before. I was like 145, maybe 148-ish, like the day before, morning of. I start running, garbage bag, run to the gym about 3 miles, whatever. Sauna, come back. I hop on the plane, and I arrive at the place. I bring a scale, and like I step on the scale, and I hardly lost any weight from like all the running and stuff because I reabsorbed the water. Because in Arizona it's super dry, you're not reabsorbing like any water, but in
Right.
California it's so much. We're right next to the sea. I absorb so much more water, and I step on the scale, and I'm like, man, I have like 10 hours left, but because at the time the plane landed, it was already night, and I have to weigh in the morning tomorrow, and I'm like, what am I gonna do? So day before the competition, I like go to a gym. I was born in San Jose, California, where they're located, so I got into a gym for free using a guest pass because they don't allow people from, like, say if you live in Arizona to get a free pass. So I show them my birth certificate to get in. It's like, please let me in. And I go into the sauna, a hot tub. I stay in there for hours and hours. Oddly, I saw the Hmong brothers. Thank you for letting me use your cream, by the way. They gave me this cream to help me sweat more. Thank you. Otherwise, I would not have made weight. And I cut down to like 134, 135 ish. And I'm like, okay,
Wow.
the rest of the night, I get like maybe 1, 2 hours of sleep. And I'm like, okay, tomorrow, I'm probably gonna like cut the 3 pounds in my sleep, right? And I'm like, okay, I'll be okay. I go, wake up in the morning, I got no sleep, right? And I'm like, shoot, I still have to cut these 2 or 3 pounds left. And there's a hot tub in the hotel that I'm staying at, but it opens at like I think it was 6 or 8 a.m. and the weigh-ins are like at 10 a.m. Right? So I use the hot tub as soon as I can. I start cutting with Mexico's team, and then we're cutting weight together, and I'm like, hey man, you guys are great. By the way, what weight classes are you fighting? And they fight in the same exact weight classes that my teammates are from my gym. And I'm like, wait, I just helped my teammates' opponents cut weight. And I'm like, shoot. I go back, I'm like, okay, the hot tub isn't cutting me enough weight. I lose maybe like half a pound. I'm like, damn. At this point, I haven't drank, I haven't eaten for like at least 48 hours straight. And I'm barely alive, and I'm like, I'm running over to the gym. Right, my girlfriend was fucking amazing. She got me like an Uber or whatever, a Lyft, and paid for it and everything. And I go to back to this gym that let me in for free because I still have the guest thing. I go into the sauna again. I'm like, I go back to the tournament, weigh in. I step on my friend's scale. It says I'm still overweight. I go back to the gym.
Man, these are the stories that when we think about fighting, we tend to glorify it. We're like, "Oh, professional fighters." We see the UFC, we see the end product, all the the guys making the big paychecks and the lights and the ring girls and all this. I think especially casuals, especially the normies, need to hear these stories about the suffering of weight cutting because essentially we're killing ourselves. We
Mm,
are torturing ourselves to this point where we're about to die. If you push us just a little further, we can die. And
yeah.
then it's not a contest of who's the best fighter. It's a contest of which guy can push themselves to the brink of death and then still be the best fighter after that, which
it's horrible, man.
it's a
It, it
radically different thing than just what happens in the gym where we focus on technique and conditioning.
I've met loads of guys in the gym who are just straight up better fighters than me. Honestly, at nationals, the guy that I fought, Derek Sinmung, if you analyze our technique, you put us in front of a camera, we throw a jab, a roundhouse kick, whatever. Like he probably had better technique than me, and he's much taller than me, much heavier than me. Like by all means, he should have won that fight. But the weight cut and
Mhm.
strength and conditioning were the differences in that fight. Which thank you, my coach Pont. He made me run 3 miles every other day, jump rope 12 rounds every other day. Like my conditioning was on point for that match. And
Mhm.
that was the difference. Like it isn't about who is not purely who has the best technique, not about who purely has like the most beautiful roundhouse kick. If it were up to
Yeah.
those, then maybe the Shaolin guys would be winning UFC titles, right? But
Yeah.
Shaolin monks can't fight, at least according to Ramsey Dewey from Shanghai, China.
Well, technically, that was Antonio Gracefo who said that. I just asked him the question,
Fair enough.
but it made a lot of people think, "Oh man, that made people so upset, like
Yeah.
so upset." Man,
I don't
like
know why.
even when I interviewed Yilong, the Chinese fighter who was famous for dressing up as a Shaolin monk and then going in and competing and bouncing punches off his head, showing his iron head technique. When I asked him about traditional martial arts and combat sports and so on, he said, "Look, traditional martial arts are beautiful. Chinese kung fu, it's beautiful. I love it. It has a special place in my heart." And I'm paraphrasing, but combat sports is a radically different thing, and you have to respect the difference because
Mm,
exactly like you said, it is not about form, it's about function. Anybody on YouTube, any guy who has ever put up a heavy bag video of themselves hitting the heavy bag, and there are millions of these, every single one of them who has any views at all has received a comment, at least one comment, probably more, telling them their form is wrong or bad, they're doing everything wrong, they have no power, they suck, etc. It doesn't matter. If they're a professional boxer or a complete noob, they will
mhm.
receive these exact same comments. And Stephen Skelly in the comments says he is guilty. I don't know if he says he is guilty of this
Of commenting or
transgression
getting commented.
because that comment came pretty soon. Anyway, why was I bringing this up?
It's because it's not about form. It's
Yes.
about like whether or not you can perform at the highest of levels. If it was just about form and like being smart, Yuri Prochazka would never be in the UFC. Alex Pereira wouldn't
Mhm.
be champ. DDP wouldn't be champ. Wonder Boy would be champion of the world right now. I mean, he's got beautiful technique, flawless technique. But there's guys like DDP who like ooh fight like that and
Yeah,
still
yeah.
win because of strategy, strength, size, conditioning, all these factors that sometimes matter more than just pure technique.
Indeed. There's a Chinese fighter, a guy named Ma Khashate, and he competed in a road to UFC fight a while back. Won his fight, got a UFC contract for their road to UFC fights. This guy, I I I never really thought like, yeah, this guy has a chance at a UFC contract. I looked at all the other guys like, oh, this guy's much tougher. This guy is a much harder sparring session for me. Surely he's got a better shot. Then I watched the actual event, and Makashate, he performs in the octagon the exact same way he does in the sparring room. Same moves, same pace, same everything.
Mhm.
Same calm, cool, collected sense about him. And he won that fight doing the exact same flying knee on his opponent he did on me in our sparring session, just with a little more pop behind it. And I watched that and I was like, holy crap, I grossly underestimated this guy because he's not flashy, he's not zingy, he doesn't have that fast little
Beautiful
cartoonish pop
spin
we're
kick.
expecting to see behind the strikes. He did do a spinning kick, but it was kind of slow and loopy, but
Mhm.
it connected. It did the job. And I remember thinking like, man, I should know better at this point in my life not to judge a fighter by the aesthetics. And yet I see this again and again and again. And man, I remember when I was sparring with this dude, it was it was a pretty low key sparring session. I was like, ah, this guy's, he's nothing special. He's okay. And his pace was pretty slow.
Mhm.
And he kind of lulled me into a sense of carnal security. He made me feel comfortable sparring with him. And then at that moment where he drew me in, boom, he jumps up into a flying knee, lands it right on the sternum, and drops me.
Ooh,
And I was like, huh,
that shit
holy crap,
works. Yeah.
that works. That is a
Mhm.
viable strategy. And he did the exact same thing to win that UFC contract. Like, exact same thing, beat for beat.
I think a good analysis and a good example of someone who does that at like the highest level for UFC is like, for example, I hate the guy, but Sean Strickland, like
Mm,
he performs literally exactly how he is almost deadpan cold, like almost psychopathic. The way he's just looking at you, staring you down, and just like jab, jab, jab. And not like there's loads of guys in the gym who can perform and maybe even beat Sean Strickland in the gym, but like
mhm,
can they perform like that under the headlights? Can they perform with that with the crowd? Can they perform like that with another guy staring back at you that looks like Alex Pereira? Probably not. And like for example, in terms of the cardio aspect, like Murad Dvalishvili, who I think is cheating using EPO, by the way, beat Piotr
mm.
Jan, and Piotr Jan has the most beautiful technique on the ground, on the feet, takedowns that I've ever seen of anybody. Jose Aldo, same thing, right? And Murad beat both those guys by just using cardio.
Mm,
Yeah.
indeed.
Mm. Uh,
Yeah, so this is this is another one of those things I think, prospective combat sports athletes really need to understand that, and it's one of the most common questions I get on my channel, and I'm not sure if I made a dedicated video about it. The idea that, well, they say, "Hey, coach, I feel like I perform pretty well in the gym. In sparring, I feel great. But as soon as I fight, I'm a different person and I can't pull the trigger and I just can't. What's going on?" And I think a lot of people can relate to this because they go through with this. We create this imaginary monster in our mind that is the fight, or our opponent. We turn him into an imaginary monster that doesn't exist in the gym, and we turn it into something completely different than what we're actually training for. And this goes into the realm of fight psychology, of how to pull people out of that funk and make them realize that it is the exact thing. You are training for a fight in the gym. It's not an imaginary monster. It's not a completely different thing. It is, but it isn't, but it is, but it isn't.
mm.
So, how would you answer that question if somebody said to you, "Hey, Ryan, I don't fight the same way that I practice. How do I fix that?"
I think you did make a dedicated video on this, and I've seen it, but I'm gonna take a different route than the way you answered
Okay.
it. I think that a lot of fighting is mental as well as physical,
Mhm.
and a lot of that, like those anxieties that you feel during the fight, it happens not just because, like, say it's there's just so many people watching you or whatever, but because you're not used to it. Like Zhang Wei Li had this really great video I saw, and she essentially walks out to the UFC PI as if it's the fight. They have the people watching, they have like
Mhm.
people cheering for her, they have the walkout music, everything's the same, and then she goes out and spars, right? Like having something like that, or same thing with like Sean Strickland sparring this Bellator middleweight champion or whatever. Like having something like that where you remove as many variables as you can, like don't have people in your gym? Get people. Don't have the walkout there? Do the walkout, right? Adding these things makes it more specific. Like the Chinese guy who fought exactly how he sparred. He removed some of the variables so that how he sparred is how he fights. And when you get more and more used to that, just like you would with anything, like if you were practicing a speech, for example, you would go up and practice it in front of a bunch of people as opposed to just practicing in your room. You can practice however many times in your room and be fully confident saying it, But unless you practice in front of people, of course you're going to be nervous in front of more people, right? And just the other day on Saturday when I was at the open mat, like we got a corner, we had a ring up, and then we had a bunch of people on the side, and then we sparred. And that's how it turned from a light sparring session into the other guy there was full force spinning back kick. But I wouldn't be prepared for that in a fight if not doing that in that ring. Like I wouldn't be prepared for people shouting at me. I wouldn't be prepared for having a ring there. I wouldn't be prepared for having to face a guy down and spar him the same way I would for a fight.
Oh, for sure. Man, one thing that really threw me off when I started competing in professional kickboxing, and this again was one of the main differences than say competing in Taekwondo.
Mm,
Because in my mind, it was like, oh, it's a similar combat sport. I've competed in front of people, no big deal. And then I get in this kickboxing ring, and people in the crowd. It was at a nightclub, and there are a bunch of drunk people watching this,
mm.
and they are shouting obscenities. They are saying the rudest things like, "You suck! Get out of there, you bum! If I was in there, I'd just kick him in the head. What are you thinking?" And they're like right in my face. People up in the front row, and I was not prepared for that. I was like, I start paying attention to the audience instead of the guy punching me in the face. And I'm like, "You're hurting my feelings, and this is worse than the guy hurting my face." And it is the wrong headspace to be in a fight.
Mm.
And I remember when I started coaching, I remembered that experience, and I remember getting my nieces. They were living with me at the time, and so I had them come and and shout angry things at the fighters I was training from the sidelines. Just, "Yeah, bomb," just smack talking, and they were great at it. They were great
You were
smack
great
talkers.
at it.
They were
Nice.
amazing at it. Anyway, they're just shouting smack talk from the sidelines, and afterwards, I remember my fighters I was training, they were like, "That was so demoralizing." Like,
Mhm.
I I wasn't expecting that at all. "Let's do it again."
Let's do it
It
again. I
it
think
was a
there's
great experience.
I think there's a basketball scene where Adam Sandler is playing with this basketball player. He does the exact same thing. He just starts like absolutely bombing on this dude because he gets distracted. And every single time he shoots a three-pointer and he says something mean, he misses until he gets used to it, right? I think that's a big part of it. I think the other thing that you talked about your experience going from taekwondo to kickboxing, which I also had an experience with, was not having a dobak on, like not having the pants to
Mhm.
kick with and not having like the little snap every
Yes.
time you kicked. It was so weird, right?
Yes. It doesn't seem
Yeah.
like it should matter, but it matters. It's
Yeah.
like you get so used to that snap, so reliant on that sensation, on that audible cue that without it you feel naked.
Yeah. It feels weird, right?
Super weird. It's a weird transition.
I think that's
Every
another
little
thing.
variable makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Like shortening variables like that is something that's really, really important. Like when I went to my first Sanda match in ages, I've been striking, but without headgear, without a body gear on. And like when I shot a takedown, I had headgear on. I was like, what is this? This feels different. And like I just
Yeah,
didn't,
yeah.
I couldn't secure double legs, single legs like I usually would. So I stuck to like upper body stuff, for example.
Yeah, it adds like an extra inch to your head.
Yeah, and
It's
fighting on a Muay Thai, for example, like that was also different. Like we drilled some
Mhm.
stuff with that, but like I feel like my other opponents, they were not used to that rule set where like if you just push them off twice, you win the round. And that's
Mhm.
how I won nationals because like oftentimes the judges will like they see from different angles, right? But they might counter kick towards your favor, they might not. And like the only thing for sure that's true is you can see clearly takedown, which the ref in the middle does for the judges around, and number two, pushing them out of the ring, which again the ref in the middle does, and you can see very clearly they're out of the ring or they're on the ground. Same thing with
Yeah,
MMA.
and the same thing with Soul Calibur for all of you, video game nerds. Come to think that that's like the only fighting game I can think of where a ring out is a legitimate win. There's probably more.
Oddly, not really a fighting game, but Super Smash Bros. If you hit them off the platform,
Oh,
remember?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
haven't played
yeah.
that one too much, but yes, yes.
Yeah, I haven't played it too much either, but it was really funny because I was playing with my my fellow team USA member, Jared the Grappler, who has a YouTube channel, by the way. Check him out. He's an MMA fighter as well. I think he's 2-2. He's an amateur MMA fighter, and we were playing Super Smash Bros. And then we were just making Sanda jokes like, "Oh, I pushed you off the lei tai, bro." Hello? Could they hear me the entire time?
I'm not sure, it froze for me. You were talking
Oh,
about Jared the Grappler, and then we went silent.
he's a Team USA member as well. He also has a YouTube channel, and we were playing Super Smash Bros. And like you pushed him off the platform to get a KO or whatever. And it's like best 2 out of 3. It's literally Sanda Light. I was watching Cobra Kai, and
Yeah,
they were fighting on this platform. I was like,
yeah,
that's just a lei tai, bro.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's
uh,
literally what lei tai means is platform.
yeah.
Yeah, that's it is so fascinating how you if you change the dimensions of the arena, it changes the sport dramatically.
Mm,
So the first professional MMA fight I had was in a very small cage, like really small. It was probably like maybe it was probably less than 4 meters squared.
mhm,
Um, which doesn't sound as small as it actually is. You get in there and you have a cage that's like 4 meters.
mhm,
That's enough space where the ref says, "Are you ready? Are you ready? Fight." You take one step forward, and you're already grappling. It's
mhm.
essentially a grappler's cage. And at that point in my life, I was a very inexperienced grappler, and so it forced me right away to come to the conclusion I have to become an expert grappler if I'm going to succeed at this sport, especially because of this arena,
Mhm.
because grappling is unavoidable with a cage that small. If you got a big cage like UFC size, you can run around, you can dance around a little bit, you can play all kinds of different striking strategies, but in a small confined area, no,
It's
it is
for
absolutely unavoidable.
and for my American viewers watching, that's 2 Ramsey Dewey sizes long by 2 Ramsey Dewey sizes long for a cage, because we don't use inches or whatever. We need human size stuff. But that played a huge role even in UFC fights. Like there are 2 different
Mhm,
size cages for the UFC. Like
mhm,
for the Stipe versus Francis Ngannou fight, like for a large part of it, it's also because Francis got a lot better. But Francis in the first fight, Stipe was just boxing out on the feet, wrestling or whatever, because there's more open space. But in the second fight, man, Francis had so much less space in that cage. You just throw a bomb and he's done. Like, and that's what happened. He got KO'd.
yeah. So you've competed in a few different, styles of arenas, like open mats for jiu-jitsu and the Lei Tai for Sanda.
Mhm.
What's your favorite style of arena to compete in?
Definitely the cage. Like I like the ability to push someone against a cage and just start wrestling them is so fun to me. But I think the coolest looking one for sure is the lei tai, because like you're on a 2 foot platform, you push the guy off and you win the round. And you're like, yeah. Like at the end of my fight at nationals, the guy throws a spinning back fist. I go under and I push him off the cage. I'm like, yeah. It was the best feeling in the world. But I feel like to compete in and to train in, it's definitely the cage. Definitely the cage.
Yeah, the original plan, at least Horian Gracie's plan for the UFC, was to have a raised platform, but instead of, mats where you could safely fall on them, he wanted a moat with crocodiles in. He wanted a
The
croctagon. Yes, a
bro not
croctagon.
bro not only stole the sidekick to takedown from the Chinese fighters, he was also stealing the lei tai from them. Or tried
But
to,
surrounded by crocodiles.
but
Man,
surrounded by.
one of the greatest tragedies is that, the UFC has never capitalized on making the croctagon a playable stage in one of their UFC video games.
That would be so funny. I think they have like the Muay Baran like rope thing, and then like the little
Yeah, yeah.
cage thing. But I don't know how they would do that. Like, would they just like if you get pushed out, you lose? I guess you die, but
Yeah, the crocodiles would devour you or something.
I don't know how that would work. But that would be sick. That would be sick.
Suddenly would turn into a Mortal Kombat death trap. They'd have to put a more mature rating on the game, most likely.
Yeah. I think is it already rated M? I don't know. What do you
I'm
think
not
about
sure.
What do you think about UFC fighters and like regular UFC fans just bringing their kids to a UFC event? Do you think it's like too bloody or?
Huh. That's a good question. So I went to Thailand a couple of years ago to visit my brother, and I brought my kids and my wife. We all went together, family trip, and we went to Rajadamnern Stadium because I'd been to Lumpini. I'd seen some Muay Thai fights at other stadiums, but I hadn't been to Rajadamnern, so I really wanted to go there and see what that was like, see what the difference was. And I had this question like, my kids have never seen a live combat sports event. Is this is this going to affect their psyche? Is this going to turn them into serial killers? I don't know. And then I was like, well, um, I mean, I've done it. They know that like this is the sort of thing that I do for a living, so why not? Let's take the kids. I didn't know how they were going to react, and afterwards they were like, "That was cool."
Yeah, that's what I think.
And
That's the way I feel.
they were two little girls at the time, so we're going back in February. We'll probably go check out the new Lumpini Stadium. I haven't been to Lumpini since before they remodeled, so I don't know what the new stadium is like there. So I'm taking them back there to see Muay Thai fights. But as far as attending UFC events, it's expensive. That's the
That's the
first
only
place my
reason.
mind
That's the
goes.
only
Like,
reason. Yeah.
man, you can buy so many things for the cost of a UFC ticket, man. It's expensive. But
Mhm.
is it moral and ethical to take kids to one? You know, I think if if you teach your kids correct principles about martial arts and combat sports, then sure. If if you feed your kids delusional ideas about martial arts and combat sports, maybe not.
Mm.
If you give your kids the proper framework for what violence is and isn't, just uses of violence, how how um, how violence operates in the context of combat sports versus, um, oh, I don't know, maybe bringing a kid who does not have a good grasp on that sort of thing into an MMA fight, where he might just think, oh, it's okay to hit people for no reason because I saw these dudes do it and my dad thinks this is fun, so I'm going to hit people. You've got to make sure that children are emotionally mature enough to understand the difference between a combat sport and just hurting people for the sake of hurting people. And it's
I
the
have.
same thing I would say
Oh,
with
sorry.
like bringing a child to a martial arts class. A lot of people sign their kids up for karate classes or taekwondo classes. And taekwondo is a sport where, it's not as intense as say Muay Thai, but you can still win via knockout. You can kick a dude in the head, knock him out cold, and walk away the winner, even in a children's taekwondo competition.
I think
And
in
so,
children's taekwondo competition, head like you're not allowed to knock the other kid out, but
yeah, up to a certain age, yes,
yeah.
yes. Um, my kids get upset when I call them children, and my older daughter's like, "I'm 12, Dad. I'm a preteen." Like, "You're a child. Come on."
Mm.
Um,
I'm still a kid in my mind, and I'm 20.
yeah, I'm that age where if somebody's half my age, I'll think like, "Ah, you're just a kid." No, but at the same time, I try not to say those sorts of things. It's condescending. "You're a man, my friend. Ryan, you're a man. Don't let anybody, including yourself, tell you otherwise." It's,
Funny thing, actually, Steve, who we both know, calls me a junior adult because I'm still in college and all. I like that term. I like that term.
a
But
junior adult. Okay.
I have a radically more extreme belief on that than you. Like, for example, like Steve takes his kid to watch WWE or whatever. And in my mind, if you're allowed to bring your kid and watch any TV show, movie, whatever, like if you watch Captain America, there's gonna be a fight in it. Like
Mhm.
GSP was in Captain America, for example, right?
Yeah.
He fought Captain America. Like, what's the difference between that and bringing them to like a sporting event where they fight? Or same thing with like if you bring them to an American football event, if they have bad morals anyway, they're gonna just randomly tackle some guy on the street, and is
Yeah.
that might even be worse than like maybe like doing a double leg on them softly or whatever, like football tackling them, and might even hurt them more, right?
Yeah,
Like
for
I
sure.
think, and in terms of like you didn't bring this up, but like, oh, what if there's blood or whatever? There can be blood in any sport. Like in
Mhm.
basketball, especially, like people cut each other with elbows going for dunks and stuff. Like Steve has told me that he's gotten hurt more from elbows in basketball than in fighting, which is kind of hilarious to me. But
Yeah, I rarely play basketball. I've taken some nasty ones, man. It's
yeah,
kinda shocking.
yeah, it's
But,
kind of
yeah, as a parent, you'll be able to tell right away what your children's level of emotional maturity is and whether or not, like, if you take them to see a movie with a fight scene, if they're emotionally mature enough to realize this is a work of fiction, not a how-to manual of how to conduct my life.
mm,
Um, yeah, you know if your kid can handle that. And, again, the same thing with a combat sports event. Like, I I didn't know for sure because my kids fight with each other quite a bit, at least they used to a lot more than they do now. But when I took them to Rajadamnern Stadium and saw the Muay Thai fights, in the back of my mind, I was thinking like, "Hmm, are they gonna see this and think it's okay to start dropping elbows instead of just the hammer fists they usually go with? I don't know. Let's find out."
and then they turned out fine.
They turned out fine.
Actually, funny story. Steve's daughter, is like I think turning 3, and she watches WWE with him and starts dropping elbows on him. But as long as it's not on the other kids, I guess it's fine. If they know that they're playing around. I think also the other thing is like the same way if they watch Captain America in a fight scene, even if they say, "Oh, this is a how-to way to live my life," Captain America is a great role model to look up to, like these movie characters and whatever. And there's a lot of bad people in MMA, like your John Jones and Conor McGregor. But by and large, like these guys after a fight, they hug each other, they shake hands, they touch gloves. Like Wonder Boy Thompson, great example. Like great dude, really nice to everybody. It shows that there is a way to conduct violence without like hurting people, a way to submit people without having to hurt them, and a new way to like settle things as opposed to just trying to hurt each other, like say like using grappling, for example, to like subdue
Sure.
their opponent, as opposed to Muay Thai where it's just like punch, knee, elbow, whatever. And I think in a lot of ways that's a lot safer to introduce the children to, as opposed to like bring them to American football game where they just see people tackling them and us cheering for them. You know.
Yeah, and football is an interesting case because it's a game, and it's a game with extreme injuries,
Hmm.
extreme dire consequences, a lot of concussions, a lot of damage being dealt, but it's played up for the cool factor.
Hmm.
Like if you look up, you can find so many compilations of tackles, for example, and they look incredibly cool. Like if you
Hmm.
just look up NFL best tackle compilation, you'll find some incredibly fun videos to watch at the expense of human health
Guy getting tackled.
and
Yeah.
and suffering. Yeah, it's brutal, but it looks fun. And when you're a kid, like I grew up in a small town in America where the Great American Football Ritual was a big thing. I never really got into football, but every other dude I knew loved football. All the kids loved playing football at recess. It was just what people did growing up in small town Idaho. And it's almost impossible to divorce the small town American boy's mind from football is a fun game that we're supposed to play. And so introducing a child to this idea of if you're good enough in football as a child, then you can play football in college, then you can play football
The NFL.
in yeah, the NFL. You can go, yeah, and yeah, and a lot of people get stuck on this dream. Now, I had a completely different thought as you were speaking, which is so at Rajadamnern Stadium, it's all adults fighting. At Lumpini, after hours,
Mm,
it's they bring out children, like actual children, and they fight exactly the same way under the same rules as the adults do. And I just started thinking, how would I feel having my kids watch kids their age doing full contact fighting? I don't know how I would feel about that.
Mm.
So, I'm not sure if I would take my kids to, like, a Lumpini Stadium after hours, kids fight because I don't know what kind of message that sends.
I think that's just immoral in general. Like having kids do full contact fighting. Like I think that if you're full contact striking as a kid, like depending on your age, like if you're below like I'd say like 15, you're full contact fighting. As someone who did that, by the way, like
Yeah, yeah,
that's horrible for your health. That impedes your my growth. I'm short as a stick, man. Like it impedes your mental capacity, your brain development. Like
mhm,
it significant. There's a reason why, like say in Sanda, there's junior rules whereby you're not allowed to kick the head, or you're not allowed to punch to the head multiple times
yeah,
consecutively, or like you're in Taekwondo, you're not allowed to knock the guy out if you're a kid. Like that, all of these things are rules in place for a reason for the kid's health, because like
mm,
that's dangerous. In my opinion,
yeah,
that's just immoral. The same way why like I think that it's immoral to have little kids playing American football, same way I don't think it should be socially acceptable in Thailand for kids to be full contact fighting. And in America, we just have the opposite like cultural standard. Like in Muay Thai, it's Muay Thai. Sorry, in Thailand it's Muay Thai. In America, it's American football.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And then we also run into that issue of trying to impose cultural mores onto another culture, like, "Your culture is immoral because you're having children fight," and they're like, we're doing that because 'cause we're poor and starving, and that's how we eat, so calm down, dude." It's
Facts.
it's a it's a mess is what it is. Sorting it
Mm,
out is a mess.
yeah, I think also uh I think also the problem then becomes a social cultural issue as opposed to like a kid's health issue, which is really what it should be, you know.
Hmm. Indeed. Indeed, and at the same time, it's like I do often hear, the counter argument to what you're saying about kids fighting in Thailand is, "Well, they need to because they have to support their families," and I'm like, "Well, hold on a second. In what other culture is it the kid's responsibility to support the family as opposed to say, oh, I don't know, the parents?" Um, it's it's different. It's different.
Yeah, I also hear that argument, and my counter argument is just have amateur rules where they're not allowed to knock each other out. Like or like that they have to wear elbow pads or whatever. Like it's not that difficult to water down the rules a little bit so kids can do it and practice it safely, and then become a pro in it later on in life, and then make their family money. And like in addition to that, like I understand the sentiment of like wanting to like care for your parents and make them money. But at the same
Yeah,
time, it should be on the parents' illness, not on them to support the family. But you know, it's a social cultural issue and an economic issue at that point, as opposed to a kid's
it
health issue.
is. It is.
Yeah.
And to further poop on Thai culture, which is a shame because I love Thai culture for the most
Same.
part. But that seems to be what this segment is turning into is pooping on Thai culture. Um, what was I gonna say? Something negative about Thai culture. Muay Thai.
It's food, something. I love the
Something
food
about kids
actually.
fighting. Oh, yeah. Oh, man, that's something I'm really looking forward to in February. Thai food,
Not
man.
not pooping on Thai culture. Thai food is
Not
very
pooping on
tasty.
Thai culture. Um, something to offend all my friends in Thailand. Ah, yes.
Mm.
The the longevity of the fighters themselves. The
Yes.
average Thai fighter retires in their early 20s. In their early 20s, they're broken. A lot of
Mhm.
them are broken and unable to continue.
Yeah. And they can't make their parents money at that point, you know?
Yeah, you have guys who are, like, 21 who've had 200 fights under their belt, sometimes even more. Guys who
Mhm.
have literally been fighting every single weekend, sometimes twice a week, which is technically illegal at this point, but they still do it since they were old enough to stand up and get in the ring and put on boxing gloves. And a lot of people will come to me and they will say, "I wish I would have started martial arts earlier. I wish I would have started as a kid." And I understand this sentiment, but they also seem to think if I had started competing earlier in boxing or something, then I would be a total stud by now. I would be the next Mike Tyson or something like that. But the as I always say, you only have so many fights in you.
Mhm.
You only have so many fights in you before your body won't sustain it anymore. And I often see guys who get a later start, like guys who start training in their mid-20s, for example, a point
Mhm.
where a lot of people feel like they're at a disadvantage, and they go on to have tremendous success.
Tony
Now
Ferguson,
it's
Alex Pereira. Yeah.
yeah. Now a lot of these guys had some kind of athletic background before. They're not learning how to move their body for the very first time. They're learning how to fight. Um, but they go into the fight game with the added advantage of 0 brain damage, 0
Yeah.
cumulative damage to their brain. You probably heard people talk about, "Oh, that fighter has a good chin," and what they mean by that is that guy has not been punched in the chin enough times yet where you are going to see a visible and noticeable result from it.
Mm.
Yet. But
Yet.
he will. He will, eventually.
Eventually, everyone does. Other times undefeated. I think Alex Pereira is one of the few exceptions to he wasn't even an athlete before. He started at like 22. All he did was
Mm,
be drunk and make cars, which I guess is kind of relatively athletic, like
mm.
help like fix cars and stuff. But like as someone who started really young and instead of shitting on Thai culture, I can shit on Chinese culture now. Like my Sifu forced me into the adult division so that we could allow for all the adult rules because
Oh,
I
wow.
now understand that the junior rules were stupid. And I'm like, yeah, the junior rules are kind of stupid, but it is to protect the kids. And like I
Yeah,
would get
yeah.
seriously injured. It was horrible. And I thought my athletic career was over before I even turned 18. Unfortunately, I was wrong, which I'm very happy about, but like I've significantly shortened my career by training that much when I was younger. And like that's something that the Chinese culture pushes. Train hard, push hard.
Yeah,
At least the
yeah.
Thais, for the most part, they spar light. Like in the gym, like Chinese Sanda culture, like they especially in Team China, they just throw people because they have enough
Mm,
people. If you can survive all that hard sparring, you're gonna come out like the one person who can survive it is gonna come out great. But then you
yeah.
sacrifice the other 100 million other kids, which is why only 10,000 people want to do Sanda in China, as opposed to
Yeah, that
Iran, where it's like,
that is the Chinese model for the sports university
yeah,
is a funnel. You
mhm,
start out with the most promising prospects as far as kids go. You evaluate them, you test them, you weed them out, you make some cuts, and then there's the next tier. You make cuts, the next tier you make cuts, and then ideally you end up with the best of the best. So China has the advantage of being able to throw massive numbers of people at problems to solve problems that
mhm,
other countries don't have that same luxury. But when you mentioned that you were thrown into the adult division by a Chinese coach, man, that brought back a memory. I had it was a K1 rules fight,
mhm,
and it was over in Shandong province, and I didn't know who I was going to fight because they 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 used to do this thing, and it was a really common thing in Chinese combat sports. They would get like two teams, and the two
mhm.
teams would show up.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
they
It's
wouldn't even do
easy.
weigh-ins, they would just say, "You and you, you're closest in size, so you'll fight. You and you look like you're about the same size, you fight." They wouldn't even have weigh-ins, they just, pair you up like the day before the fight.
I
And
think that's
so
how Alex Pereira fought Israel Adesanya
yeah,
for one
so
of
I
the
get
first times.
there and they're like, there's this big dude, he's like this barrel-chested, muscular dude, and they're like, "Okay, you and you're gonna fight." So I'm like, "Okay, man, this dude looks tough." And and we have this fight, and I do my darndest to beat the crap out of him. And I kicked him in the head multiple times. I kneed him in the head multiple times. I landed some bombs on him. I'm like, I'm gonna hurt this guy specifically because, especially at that point, if you're a foreigner fighting in China, the only way to win is knock your opponent out.
Yeah.
Otherwise otherwise, if it goes to a decision, the local hometown hero gets the win no matter what most of the time. That's how it worked. Fortunately, they got a lot better about that. Like, if you fight in China now, most organizations are going to give you a fair shake if you're a foreigner. But back then, that was not the case. And so I'm doing everything I can to just kill this dude and knock him out cold because otherwise I know I'm not going to win.
Mm.
And I brutalized this guy a little bit, but it goes to a decision, and
Yes.
they give him the win. And then the funny thing is afterwards, I'm sitting backstage, and then they come and they give me a trophy, and they're like, "Okay,
We
we
know
know
you
you
won.
won. Here's the trophy, but we have to save face. We have to show the public that he's the winner because he's the local guy." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I know the drill. I know the drill." I was just surprised they actually did give me the trophy off stage.
Yeah,
That never
I'm
happened
surprised
before.
by that too.
But the reason
Yeah.
I'm telling this story is because then I find out this kid is 15 years old. That's a
Ooh.
crime in my country.
So
That
that
is child
15-year-old.
abuse. What the heck? I just beat up a child. I just beat up a 15-year-old kid. Somebody's gonna clip this and make it look very bad in the future, I'm sure.
Don't
But
worry, I'll do it on my YouTube
I
channel.
had no idea, man. I had no idea, and I'm like, "What did I just do? If I had known, I would have said no. Are you kidding me?" I was feeling so good about myself because I laid the smackdown on this guy, and when I
And it
find
was
out
a kid.
he is a kid, and it's like,
15 years old.
I'm technically old enough to be this guy's dad, and I beat him up,
Jesus.
and I'm like, "Whoa." Like, that messed me up emotionally. That messed me up on the inside. I was like, "I don't feel right about this, man." If at any point, if anything could have got me to just, retire from combat sports
That would have
besides,
been amazing.
a the brutal injury that did make me retire from combat sports later on, it would have been that, man. Just the,
I had the reverse story, actually. I
yeah,
beat up an old man when I was a kid. Like, and the thing is that actually did get me to retire. I retired for like years after that. I was like, I saw him getting carried out in a stretcher. I saw his like wife and kids. His wife must have been like older than my mom, and my mom's like 50 something. Like, I was like, what? I just beat up it like, and within the headgear. I couldn't even tell he was that old. And I was like, damn. And they don't allow this stuff in America. I had to go to Asia too. My dad's from Taiwan. I go to Taiwan often. And
yeah.
man, like that just hurt. Like, it's a different level. But I was a kid and he was an old man. So I guess I assume you weren't that old back then, but like
I was in my
they have this.
30s.
Oh, okay. So they have a rule in Sanda rules in the US where you can't compete if you're over 35 unless you have an exemption.
Hmm,
Taiwan, they don't have that rule. Like I was like like going with Chilala, and I somehow just found out that he was like 40 something. I was like, you can still fight. Like, they'll let you still fight. He's like, oh yeah, Taiwan. It's like, I guess
yeah.
so. And it's amazing, pivoting the topic a little bit. It's amazing, like the level of Chinese martial artists that are in Taiwan, the Philippines, Korea, even like I went to Korea, like because China is just so full of like the exact kind of stuff that you we just talked about, like the Chinese culture. It's odd though how we can hate so much on something, but like we love Thai culture. I don't know about you, but I love Chinese culture. You're in China.
Mhm.
I assume you love Chinese culture.
Yeah, for
Like,
sure.
the Bruce Lee
Yeah.
fanboys from the Church of Jikundo or whatever you call
Yes.
it.
The
They're
Church of
like,
Jeet Kune Do.
you're evil. You hate you, Bruce Lee. You suck. You can't fight. Bruce Lee would have killed you. And I love Bruce Lee, but I have the exact same criticism. I
Yeah.
love Taekwondo. I love Sanda. I love Muay Thai. I love wrestling. I love Jiu-Jitsu. But I criticize them just as much as the next guy because I want those things to be better. You know?
Yeah, man. You can't win with the Church of Jeet Kune Do. I made a video where I literally quoted Bruce Lee. I quoted Bruce Lee. And the pushback on that was, "Why do you hate Bruce Lee so much to say something like that?" Like, you can't
Oh my
win
god.
with these guys. You
Yeah,
can't win.
sometimes I like how you call it the Church of Jikundo because like I'll post something with literally a Bible verse and then they will attack me for it. Like my and this isn't to say for all Christians, but like I
Yeah.
know you're a Christian, a Mormon. My friend Roman and my friend Jared are both Christians as well, and they're really cool. but like sometimes I'll just post a Bible verse and then people will start arguing with me about it. I'm like,
Mhm.
and I
Yeah.
recognize the difference between like different sects of church. Like a Catholic will take the Bible verse like for sure, versus like say a Protestant won't. But
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's the same thing with the Bruce Lee fans, which is odd because like he's not a religious figure or anything.
Well, in the absence of practicing a religion, people often look for well, they look for something to fill that void. And
Hmm.
sometimes it's a charismatic icon like Bruce Lee. Sometimes
And
it's
sometimes it's a
a
Chinese
martial
communist
artist.
government.
Sure, yeah. I mean, that literally is, communist dogma, that's Marxist doctrine,
Hmm.
where the party replaces religion,
Yeah,
and, like, Marxism essentially eschews religion because that takes takes attention away from, fidelity to the state. It's like, well, if they are loyal to the religion or the religious leader or the prophet or the priest or whatever it is, that takes loyalty away from the state. So, I mean, that's literally Marxist dogma right there.
oddly, I've met a weird amount of, I don't know how this happens, but Christian Marxists or Christian communists, right?
Huh,
And then I'll say a
interesting.
direct quote, just like you do for
Christian
Bruce Lee.
Marxist.
Yeah, a Christian Marxist. It's weird. Maybe I'll talk about them later, but like I'll
Hmm,
say a direct quote like you do for Bruce Lee, and I'll say something from like Marxism or whatever, or even from the Bible. The most obvious one is like religion is the opium of the people for Marx, and they'll start arguing with me about it. It's like that's the book to which you're referring to. That's the subscription to which you have for ideology, and like to me, like a lot of the dogmas that come from the Church of Taekwondo or any religion for that fact, like it blinds you so much that not even your own words can like stop you. Their own words
yeah.
from
Yeah,
the book of
it is interesting. Along those lines, I remember I've been seeing a lot of what do you call it? Essentially, the resurrection of the idea of zero populationism. I'm not sure what people are calling it right now, but like back in the 70s and 80s, this idea of zero population became very popular. The idea we need to reduce the human population, otherwise we're going to run out of resources and we're all going to die, something like that.
Mhm.
And a bunch of folks recently are essentially saying we need to do away with capitalism and become communists and resort to zero populationism. And I'm thinking like, well, hold on. The actual Chinese Communist Party doesn't even think that way anymore.
Mhm.
Like they are practically begging people to have more children these days because they've realized that after so many years of the one child policy and then the two-child policy and now the three-child policy, they're starting to turn it into the pretty please, just have kids, just do it, come on, why won't you policy. It's
It's kind of funny how that switches.
yeah, because they've looked at it mathematically and realized unless people are having an average of 2.5 children, which they're not in China at this point, we're going to run into some major problems in just a few years as far as not being able to sustain the infrastructure that we built.
Those overpopulation like conspiracy theorists I call them, but those people who concerned so much with overpopulation have been wrong like every century. Like there's always someone who says like a century ago, 2 centuries ago, 3 centuries ago that we're gonna have a problem with overpopulation, and it almost never happens. And it might happen within our lifetime, but I really don't think so. But in any case, moving away from like religion and stuff, I think that.
I
Oh,
guess I'll
hello.
take this opportunity to say I just find it fascinating that if the actual communists are saying that what these neo Marxists are proposing is a bad idea, probably a bad idea.
Yeah. The low standard, low bar. Can you hear me again?
Yeah, yeah, you just
Ah,
came back online.
okay.
Cool.
Well, I was gonna say, pivoting away from like politics and religion, I think that it's great that it's weird how martial arts can bring in. I saw this post the other day where it's like it's the only place where cops, hippies, smokers, all those people can come together and just have a good time. Like my two coaches at the garage. I'm not gonna say their names, but one of them's a Trump supporter and one of them's a hard Democrat, and they get along perfectly. And they disagree on like everything, but like they like they talk and they have a good time. They're good friends and they coach together wonderfully. And oddly, although they have those two ideologies, the way they think about martial arts is opposite. Like the conservative guy is like the most liberal guy about martial arts. He says like everything can work unless as long as you hit the other person. Whereas the other one's like, these traditional martial arts isn't that. These traditional martial arts aren't that good, which is really odd to me. And I think that's
Yeah.
part of the reason they get along, and they've never had a disagreement about coaching someone in the corner. I think someone in the chat earlier was my friend Silas, and they coached him in a kickboxing fight. Never disagreed on anything. We got the knockout. Oddly, he threw a spinning back fist. The other guy mirrored the spinning back fist, and the people who say traditional martial arts don't work, he's a karateka as well as a wrestler too, and I've never seen this happen ever before, like, not even in person or online. I've never seen this happen before. He goes outside karate block to this guy's
Okay.
spinning back fist and breaks the guy's arm, and I'm like,
Oh.
"How does" my
Oh.
friend, yeah, it
Oh,
it was
wow.
I've never
Huh.
seen that happen before, but I
That's interesting.
I still have footage of
Hmm.
it if you'd like to look at it, but I was like,
Yeah.
"What?" Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
It was, like, weird to see in real life.
Do you know which part of the arm he made contact with? Was it like the middle of the
I think it
forearm,
was
somewhere in
around
there?
here. Yeah,
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, yeah, yeah.
and
Interesting. Let's talk about traditional martial arts working. You mentioned you trained in Wing Chun, and I imagine
mhm,
living in America, existing in this YouTube martial arts culture and so on, you probably got a lot of pushback about that.
of
There
course,
there
yeah,
are a ton
everyone
of people out there who are like, "Wing Chun doesn't work. Wing Chun is awful," because 'cause they've seen bad Wing Chun. I've seen a lot of bad Wing Chun. I've seen
one
some
of my
good Wing Chun as well, but there's a lot. I would say it's mostly attributed to most of the people training in most martial arts, most are casuals, and they're
mhm,
training at a casual level, and they're not particularly good at it.
mhm.
So what's been your experience with,
One of
Wing
my
Chun and
posts
combat sports?
on this YouTube channel, one of my videos has more comments than likes on it because this guy kept arguing about Wing Chun not working and like Wing Chun doesn't work, does this, does that. And I fell victim to a certain degree about the Wing Chun not working. Being Chinese and having experienced Wing Chun, like even then I was like, does Wing Chun really work though? I fly out to Taiwan before my first semester of college. I just graduated high school and everything, and I'm good friends with Jerry from Fight Commentary Breakdowns, and he does all these videos on Chilala and everything. And I'm like,
Mhm,
hey, I'm in Taiwan. I'm gonna go meet Chilala, right? And there's this video of me sparring Chilala, and man, I've never had someone like shut down my striking like he did. And
mhm.
I'm not the best striker in the world. Like I know you consider Sanda like a striking sport. Like I wrestle almost the entire time striking, mostly
Yeah.
because of my injuries at the time, but like it was amazing to me, and not only that, but his ability to like sit down on his weight and stop takedowns was like
Hmm.
really impressive to me. And like I ran miles and miles just to see the guy and learn from him. I believe during one of the sparrings I was sick from just like the rain and all that stuff and running that far. And Chilo was so nice. He had one of his friends help me on a scooter and ride me back because I ended up one of the training sessions at like midnight. I still have some of the footage that I have to post, but it's on my laptop. I have to extract it. But what is on my channel right now is me sparring with Chilala. And I did an interview with him despite having horrible Mandarin. And Taiwanese Mandarin sounds so weird, man. Like
It's different, yeah.
yeah, it's really different. My dad speaks perfect Mandarin, like mainland Chinese Mandarin, despite being from Taiwan himself. And practice after experiencing Chilala, I had experienced like Wing Chun working before with this guy Sifu Solomon at Black Sun Boxing, right? And I only visited a couple times, but my kung fu brother, Jeet Kune Do brother, shout out Aiden Mikesell, he does Jeet Kune Do, and he gave me these Wing Chun butterfly knives, and I'm like, well, I gotta learn how to use this now because he just gifted it to me for like my birthday or something. And I went to Solomon, my Wing Chun coach for it, and he's a catch wrestler as well and does MMA. He's had amateur fights for MMA, and like, man, like that working on me, like after becoming a champion, after doing all these things, and like I had a lot of imposter syndrome about like being a competent martial artist, but after like seeing myself as being a competent person, and then with the Wing Chun still working on me, it was like mind blown. And then beyond that, like the other Sanda guys doing Wing Chun, like Vincent Meng and the Meng family doing Wing Chun and Sanda, and it working. Like, and I was
Mhm.
like, man, this is something that really works. And beyond the Sanda rule set, like Tony Ferguson's Anderson Silva, I know you made a video on that as well, saying like, oh, he does this bong sao, and he does this bong sao, and it doesn't work, and he gets punched in the face for it. But all the Wing Chun nerds online are saying that it's proof that Wing Chun works. But in reality, he's just doing an elbow block. But to
Well,
me,
that
having
video
that,
is an interesting case because, um, there are so many people, they wanna see their thing work. They don't wanna be a victim of the sunk cost fallacy where they've invested all this time and money practicing their martial art only for it to be a joke. And so, a lot of people, I would say people especially who are not particularly good at fighting, they'll look at a professional fighter like Anderson Silva, they'll see he's done some lessons with Dan Inosanto, and they'll see he's practicing on a Wing Chun dummy. And then they'll see a video like that one that I commented on, where you have a Wing Chun fanatic pointing out, "He's doing these moves that vaguely resemble Wing Chun, therefore everything we do is validated."
Mhm,
And it's like, it wasn't a video poo-pooing on Wing Chun, it was a video poo-pooing the idea of, setting up a martial arts idol instead of getting out there and training for yourself.
mhm.
And,
I
th
understand that context. Yeah.
yeah,
I understand that context, and like we were saying before, like if you criticize one thing about anything, all the Church of Jeet Kune Do fanatics will be like, "You hate this thing, you suck," and in reality, like I've seen you train Wing Chun, talk to Yi Long, for example, about Wing Chun. I've seen you
yes,
talk to guys about Bagua, try that open-handed Bagua sparring. I know you like both of us. I feel are very open-minded to traditional martial arts. We just
yeah,
also want to test it, and we still have criticism for it. And like when I go to a traditional martial arts gym, like that's what I do. Like I'm trying to be respectful, do the way
mhm,
that they teach it. If they say that my MMA way is wrong, then I'm like, okay, I'll try it out your way, see how it works.
yeah,
And
yeah,
oftentimes we get something new that works with it, like the bong sao that blocks weird, the thing that goes like this. I use that
uh-huh,
all the time, like not even just like
mhm,
to block or counter shots or move out off the center line, but also to like in the clinch. Like, what are you doing in the
mhm,
clinch? You're doing a bong sao when you have the underhook and you're trying to shut them off.
yes, I'll use
Yeah,
that movement frequently, yes.
yeah, exactly.
There's a common misconception about combat sports athletes, about fighters, and I think it comes from kids who get bullied on the internet by people who say, "Oh, yeah, well, I box and you just do your dumb kung fu and I would beat you up in a fight." They get so used to having conversations like this in the comment section on YouTube or whatever social.
Mhm,
You and I, we are heavily invested in doing everything we can to give us the best opportunity at success in combat sports. Um, if there is a technique, if there is a strategy that can make my fighters better at winning fights, I want that. I have
mhm,
been training and studying multiple Chinese martial arts in China for the last 16 years. It is something I'm very interested in. And it's something I'm interested in specifically because I want to know everything I possibly can to give me every possible advantage as a coach. And
mm,
if there is knowledge I don't have, I want it.
mm.
And I've told the story of meeting Master Wu Dao Shui, the Tai Chi master who
The
beat
Tai Chi,
me up
yeah.
back in the day, and people assume I'm talking about magic, like he used some ergokinesis on me, Adam Misner style. No, not at all. This dude was fit. He could fight. This guy actually was a trainer
Mm.
of a national Sanda champion. Like he trained
Oh, that's
Sanda fighters.
awesome.
Yes. And so I was
Uh,
confused because I went to the Sanda camp up in Jiangsu province in the city of Zhenjiang to train Sanda with a friend of mine, and had a great time. It was 3 a day trainings, a lot of hard work, and then on the last day, the Sanda coach who was a former national champion, and that's a tough title to get. I mean, you've got to basically do 16 fights in a row against the best of the best in China in the sport university system to get that title to become the Sanda Wang. And And this is one of those guys who did it, and he said, "On the last day tomorrow, I'm going to take you to meet my Tai Chi master, the man who taught me everything I know." And I was like, "What? You learned that from a Tai Chi ma No, come on." I assumed we were gonna do, the just some
push
Taolu, just some
hands.
forms, some not
Yeah.
even bush hands. I just thought we were gonna do some relaxing old people stuff like you see in the parks, and then this dude wanted to
Grapple.
spar. He
Oh
wanted to
my.
spar, not grapple, not push hands. He said, "Fight me. Fight me. Do that UFC stuff. Punch, kick, grapple, whatever you want." And I tried, and this guy could fight. Like he could fight. And this blows people's minds because a lot of people have never seen an older person move well, and this guy could move really well. He could do backflips. He was athletic. He could stand in the splits. And And if you spent a meaningful amount of time in mainland China, I'm not sure how it is in Taiwan, I haven't been there, but you go out early in the morning, you see old people engaged in physical culture, like between 6 and 8 a.m., you'll see a bunch of old people out there doing physical things. They're doing martial arts forms, they're doing tai chi, they're doing ballroom dance, they're doing calisthenics, they're doing pull-ups and crazy bar tricks and things like that.
Yeah.
These are like retirement age people.
In Taiwan,
I w
actually, we have the same thing. My girlfriend, who was a former level 10 gymnast, really great gymnast, like that's right before the Olympics, right? She went to the Tai Chi people, and then, like these old people like keeping up with her. And I'm like, man, that's an elite athlete right there. These old people like teaching her these Tai Chi forms, like it's so cool to see people of that age like be able to perform like that. You and like my Sifu Solomon, who's like approaching his 50s, I believe, it really inspired me to be able to like compete, not compete per se, but like train the sport to that age. And it's like
yeah,
I thought it would be just, oh, I could do Tai Chi and Jiu-Jitsu, but like seeing you guys both strike, it's like amazing. He talked to me about like the data in exercise science about how 40 to 60 you don't have that much like physical decline, but most of it can be like due to lifestyle changes as opposed to like
mhm,
say like just regular aging past
yeah,
60. That's when you get to the bad part, but like a lot of it can be stopped with lifestyle changes, and
yeah,
that and seeing those people
and
in Taiwan.
consistency.
Yeah, it's
Consistency,
done
man.
moving. Yeah, just
I
move.
thought for sure that Master Wu would I just assumed he trained all day every day to get that good, and I asked him, like, what is your training schedule like?" And it was 1 hour a day from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. before he went to work, and he's 80 years old, he's still working as a chauffeur for the dude who owned the Zhenjiang vinegar factory.
Mhm.
Um, this was, what, 16 years ago? Um, but 1 hour a day, every day, though, every day he would do his exercise. Every day he would do his tai chi, every day he would teach his students, every day he would go through those motions to keep himself physically fit, and it worked. Man, I was in Chengdu a few months back to take my kids to go see the pandas, which, I wouldn't recommend do that in the summer because it gets blazing
Ah,
hot there, and pandas hate the heat as much as I do. They don't like coming out in the heat, so go at a colder time of year if you're gonna go see the pandas in Chengdu. But anyway, we go to Chengdu, and we're walking along the river trail, and I see these 3 old grandpas, and they've got six packs, and they've got their swimming trunks on, and there is a river, and there's a sign on the river that says, don't cross this fence, no swimming, very dangerous currents," something like that, and these old grandpas are jumping over the fence, jumping into the river, swimming against the current for, like, 30 minutes, and I'm just standing there, like,
Whoa.
expecting them to die. I'm watching them this whole time for, like, 30 minutes, and
And
they're
they
taking
just keep swimming.
turns, like, one swims, and the other one's watching, just in case he gets caught up in the current, I guess he'll jump in and save him, and they take turns swimming like that for, like, 30 minutes straight, and then they get out, and when they get out, there is a pull-up bar next to the sidewalk, next to the fence, and they get out and start doing pull-ups, and these guys, I don't know how
Insane.
old they are, they looked it's hard to measure Chinese people's age sometimes.
Yeah. Can you tell what age I am?
Yeah, I cannot. You told me you were, like, I in your early 20s? How old are you now?
I just turned 20, actually.
20, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all I could tell is these guys are old because 'cause I've seen a lot of really old, really fit guys. If I had
Mhm.
seen these guys in America back in my 20s before I'd seen this sort of physical culture amongst the elderly, I wouldn't know what to make of it. But now
Mhm.
this is like a normal thing.
Yeah, he's like, "Eh." They're doing it again this morning. It's like, "Eh, oh, where are they this morning? Oh, maybe they're going on a different current to swim against." And yes, Shaolin martial arts. This is the same Ryan Liu, that asked for something about his girlfriend. And I think also, like, with Chinese culture, it's weird when you're an American going, right? Like, I
Mhm.
even experienced xenophobia in Taiwan, and my dad is from there. Like, I'm half them. Like, and then my
Right.
other half is mainland Chinese, which is ethnically what most of them are. And like, I was just wearing an America shirt, and they were like, and I'm usually in America wearing like something that has Chinese on it, and no one bats an eye at me. There's like, oh, he's Chinese. Like, even in the
Yeah.
Native American reservations, I was wearing something that says like Taiwan or whatever in Chinese, and they just look at me and they thought I was just another Native American or something, and I was like, oh, okay. But in Taiwan, if you have an America shirt on, the taxi just straight up refused to drive me. I'm like, okay. I was like, really? And one of these taxi drivers like said the N word with the hard R to me to describe someone doing bad things to his daughter in university in
Really?
America. And I'm like, man, these people are. I thought America was bad, bro, but like Taiwan and China, bro. And
The taxi
I
driver
was
said the N word to you? Like, he
yes.
wasn't just saying "nigga," the Chinese word for, like, that filler word, like, this, that.
No, 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 no. He was speaking in English. Like he
Okay,
wasn't
wow,
saying
wow.
like "Hai shi na ge," like not the Mandarin,
Right.
but he was speaking in English. Said the N word with the hard R, not with the A, like the filler word. But he was saying like about a black person who did bad stuff to his daughter in university, and I'm like,
Wow,
I was really surprised, and that was on the way to Chilala as well. And like
wow.
the xenophobia and racism there is crazy. Like I can't. What are some of your experiences of being white in China?
Oh, man. Well, I've discovered that, out of all the places in the world, white privilege is real in China. It's
Really?
it's not necessarily real in America, not where I lived, but it's real in China. In certain
Mhm.
wear a shirt with a USA flag on it that says USA in big bold letters. I've got one right over there. I bought it here in Shanghai. I
Mhm.
can wear that around, nobody bats an eye. They're like, "Ah, he's an American. Cool." Um, but I have noticed, Chinese American friends of mine have a radically different experience. Like,
Yeah, for
they
real.
get yeah, they get called, like, bananas, like, "Ah, you're not real
All the
Chinese, you're a
time.
banana.
All
You're
the
yellow on the outside and white on the inside." It's a pejorative here. Obviously not a nice thing to say, but it's something that gets said. And,
My
like,
girlfriend hates that word.
yeah, yeah. My friend Albert, he grew up in Canada. His family's from, Guangdong, or I don't remember, somewhere in southern
That's where
China.
my mom is from too, actually.
Yeah, and he started learning Chinese as a second language in China, and at first, when people saw his Chinese-looking face, they'd get all excited and start speaking to him. When he tried to speak that, they just throw their hands up. Ah, you're just a dumb foreigner. Um, as a white guy in China, though, people are much more patient. Like I've been in China 16 years and my Chinese sucks, and I struggle through caveman Chinese, and people are like, "Oh, you're trying. That's so good. You can say ni hao. That's amazing." Ah, and
But if you're Chinese and you start learning
yeah,
it, they're like, "Ugh, you suck, you
yes.
American, you so whitewashed."
Exactly. If you struggle even a little with if you have a funny accent, if you have
The
an Asian
worst
face, they will
the
judge
worst
you. They
part
will judge
is
you harshly.
the worst part is, like, I grew up in California, like, I have friends, like, my girlfriend was born in literally born in China, and still, like, you will face that in Taiwan, in China, wherever. Like it's crazy, not the xenophobia towards like the standard like white Americans or black Americans, but to the Asian Americans, like they have such grueling hatred. Like in Korea,
Yeah,
it was the worst. In Korea, it was the absolute worst
yeah.
because not only was I not Korean, but I was also I was also American. I was like, and they expected it. They come up to me as like, "안녕하세요," and I'm like, I don't know what you're saying. And then
Yeah.
they hear the Korean, they hear the English, sorry, and I tell them that I'm Chinese, and then they're like, "Oh," and then some of them, the worst part is some of them speak Cantonese or Mandarin, and they try speaking to me in that too.
Oh,
Um,
Cantonese, yeah.
yeah, my mom spoke Cantonese at this Korean barbecue restaurant because the person didn't speak English, but they spoke Cantonese. I was like, "Yeah, let's go." My mom was so happy, and I was like, "Man, I wish I learned Cantonese so that way I can watch Donnie Yen speak Cantonese in the Yip Man movie." You know?
Yeah. I was thinking Iron Monkey in the original, but that was a great movie. You know, I'm actually a dual citizen of the US and the UK. I've
Mhm,
never been to England. My mother is from England. I grew up in this very British household in Podunk, Idaho, in a small town in the USA.
mhm,
And I had the experience of my mom constantly telling me, "Ah, you're a Yankee Doodle just like the rest of this lot." And
mhm,
I remember feeling like, um, I didn't really know how to respond to that because it's like, I mean, yes, but that sounds really bad the way you're saying that, like, and she would say that specifically when she was disappointed with me. She'd be like, "Ah, you're an American. You're one of these Yankees just like the rest of them."
mhm,
And I remember just feeling like, "Oh, wow, it must be bad to be an American then." And it's it's a strange mindset to grow up with
mhm.
because, like, my mom had a lot of cultural prejudices that she grew up with,
Being white,
growing up
right?
in England. Yeah, like, traditionally, the British hate everybody. For
Mm,
example, my mom was born, during World War II, and her earliest memories are the bomb raid sirens and war rationing and that sort of stuff. And so she grew up with, like, this intense disliking of the Germans because of World War II.
mhm.
And that was just a cultural thing. But then there are so many others. Like the English are supposed to hate the French because of rivalries that go back hundreds of years, and the
And they
Irish
also
because of
hate the
rivalries that go
Chinese
back.
because of the
Yeah,
opium.
and because of the opium, and the Argentinians because of the Falkland Island War, and the Americans because of 1776, and yeah,
Everyone.
basically everyone except the Canadians. The Canadians are okay for some reason because they never rebelled.
Everyone loves the Canadians, bro. At Pan Am's, the Canadians helped us cut weight too. Too nice.
It's funny. The Canadians are the only people who ever successfully invaded America and burned down the White House, and Americans still love them.
Yeah,
They've
like
they've
it's
forgiven
like
the War of
Japan.
1812 a long time ago.
It's just like Japan, bro. Like the same thing. Like they're so nice and their culture is so cool that we forget their like war crimes. And it's like,
Mm,
did you guys forget like Japan, like Pearl Harbor?
yeah.
They're like, "Oh, but Pokemon though." It's like
Yeah, it's funny how that worked out in America. China, on the other hand, not so much.
Yeah,
The
but we
older
were on the
generation
same side
anyway.
in the war. Yeah, like it's so
Yeah.
odd during COVID, especially like America has so much like xenophobia, which is like like against Chinese people, and
Mm.
like oddly not much towards Japan or Korea. Like they're like, oh, Japanese people, very good Pokemon, and then or like the Koreans like it's like, oh, I like the K drama, I like Squid Game, Squid Game, very good. It's like there you go. And back into politics. Sorry.
Yeah, but I guess what I was trying to get across with, talking about growing up with a British family in America, I've always wondered, like, what would it be like to go to England? Because 'cause I'm technically a citizen, I've
Dual
got a
citizen
British passport, but I'm, like, ethnically British, which doesn't really mean anything.
in
Because like,
America.
in America, you're just another white guy,
Mhm.
and if I go to England, everyone's gonna be like, "Ah, you're just a Yankee Doodle like the rest of them." So it doesn't mean anything there either. So it's like it's a strange dichotomy. So I just wonder if that's something you feel like maybe you can relate to at all.
Oh, for sure. I also have a Taiwanese passport, and like when I'm here, obviously I get they can't even tell that I'm from Taiwan. Like they're like, "Oh, you're Chinese," which I am half. But they're like, "Oh, bro, you Chinese, you give us COVID, you give us you eat the bat, you eat the dog." Like like so much racist stuff, which honestly
Mm,
I don't really care about the jokes, but like, I've gotten beaten for it. It's like I during COVID especially, and it was really bad there. And I go to Taiwan. I love America. I'm wearing this American shirt. I represent Team USA. Good. I mean, I fought for Team USA. I wear I wear the flag, like everything. And over there, I'm like ostracized. They don't even drive me in a taxi. Like
mm.
like they won't let me on the bus. And I'm like, what? It's like it's like, and to a degree, I get it because like a lot of Americans do stupid things in Asian countries, but still,
Yeah, I
to me,
notice
it's
in different cities across China, it can be either very easy or very difficult to get a taxi. For example, in Shanghai, super easy to get a taxi. In Beijing, no. No, it's rough, man. It is rough to get a taxi there. Now, they've, they've got, like, the Didi Dachu app, for example, now where you can order a car, you can order a taxi, order a Uber-style driver, on your phone, and they don't know you're a foreigner or anything like that. And there's so much translation software available now that, I think most drivers now are not worried about that sort of thing. Like, when I first got to China and I tried to hail a cab, like, "Hey, stop," they would peek out the window and be like, "Up, nope, nope." They'd start to slow down until they saw my face and be like, "Nope, it's a
no
foreigner.
American.
Moving on, moving on. I don't
Uh,
have an issue with communication." But yeah, thanks to like mobile apps, that situation has mostly gone away, except in Beijing. Yeah, yeah, man, it is for sure. Yeah, and mine is about to die at this point. So it's probably as good of a time as any to wrap this one up. We've been going about almost 3 hours now.
oh
But
shoot.
I've enjoyed this conversation, man. I'm glad I've been able to get to know you, Ryan. And so yeah, man, thanks for speaking up on the group chat the other week when we were
Yeah.
having that live conversation. That was a fun chat.
Mm. Okay. Actually,
based on
I
based
know
on a
you
fairly
hate
short.
TikTok. I know you hate TikTok, but you literally can do that on TikTok.
Well, you know, I've
Like,
never actually seen TikTok.
really?
Yeah, because
You have
what
Douyin?
I've seen Douyin, but like the Western American version of TikTok is blocked in China, and my
Mhm.
VPN runs through Hong Kong, and it's also blocked in Hong Kong, and so I can't access TikTok,
If you
even
get
if
a
I wanted
different
to.
VPN from America, then you should be able to download it. My actually I can't say this on air. So
Yeah, with a different VPN, I could, but
a person of anonymous identity in America downloaded Douyin by using some steps. And if you use an American phone number, you can also do it. But I don't
mm,
think you can with a Chinese phone number. So just ask one
yeah,
of your family from America to give you a phone number and be like, yo, I want to download TikTok. so I can talk to my fellow fans on Ramsey Dewey from Shanghai, China.
Yeah,
All
no,
right, thank
there are a bunch of apps where you can do that sort of thing. Like, man, China has so many social media
you.
apps, like so many. Like even apps that aren't social media apps, like say Taobao, which is like it's a marketplace site, kind of like Amazon, but like a lot bigger and cheaper and faster. Um, that has social media built in, so there's like
Mhm.
video sharing and photo sharing and all this, and it's intended to like share videos and photos of the stuff you buy, so you can show like, okay, this is a legit product, but people use it for whatever,
Everything. Yeah.
everything. So it's kind of crazy how like in America, apps are very specified.
Mhm.
Like Instagram is photo and video sharing. Facebook is, share comments and photos and videos. eBay is buy and sell stuff. Amazon
Mhm.
is buy stuff. In China, apps are like everything. Like, have you used WeChat, Weixin?
Yes, WeChat, yeah. Hey, what's your
Yeah,
WeChat?
it's a social media app. It's a banking app. It's a video sharing app. It's an everything app. It's the app I use as a key code to get into the gym where I go to lift weights, for example. It's
When
it's
I went to Taiwan, I had to use an app to get into one of these gyms. It'd be like, "Ah, you have big eyes, small face, so I like, what's your WeChat?" And then you find out everything about the other person. But anyway, thank you
yeah.
for having me on the podcast, Ramsey. Before your phone dies, can I
Yes.
say the outro is like, "Remember to get out there and train."
Please do. Please do. Go for it, Ryan.
Thank you for listening to the Ramsey Dewey podcast from Shanghai, China. And remember to get out there and train.
Thank you. Awesome. All right. See you in the next one, guys.
See you.